Chapter 1991. The skinny old man from the heavenly sect bid 10 million, but to his surprise, Shao Chun from the sword sect didn't continue to raise the price. This made the skinny old man furious. The skinny old man from the heavenly sect bid 10 million, but to his surprise, Shao Chun from the sword sect didn't continue to raise the price. This made the skinny old man furious. Just a second ago, he was making a solemn vow to obtain these 100 immortal spirit pills, but in the next second, he was terrified. His eyes were burning with anger, but below, on the auction stage, the Vice Valley Master of the Dan Valley said, "Congratulations to the heavenly sect for obtaining this set of immortal spirit pills." Hearing the words of the Vice Valley Master of the Dan Valley, the skinny old man from the heavenly sect felt as disgusted as if he had eaten a fly. He originally planned to discuss the sword sect, but now he went for wool and came home shorn. 10 million high-grade spirit stones for 100 immortal spirit pills. Even a fool would know that it was a loss, and a huge loss at that. However, he couldn't voice out the bitterness in his heart. After all, he was the one who bid, and now it was too late to go back on his word. In an auction, once the bid was confirmed, it was impossible to change it. The skinny old man was very clear about this. He could only grit his teeth and swallow his anger. Suppressing the anger in his heart, the skinny old man looked towards the private room of the sword's gate and said coldly, "Good, good. The student has indeed surpassed the teacher. Headmaster of the sword's gate, this old man will remember this." His words were filled with a threatening tone. Hearing this, many cultivators in the room began to whisper among themselves. Are they going against each other? The sword sect and the heavenly sect? You don't know, but the sword sect and the heavenly sect already have a grudge. This time, it is said that the new sect master of the sword sect has personally come, and the heavenly sect is said to be led by the vice sect master Paisia. The skinny old man from the heavenly sect was called Paisia, and he was one of the vice sect masters of the heavenly sect. However, after hearing his words, Shao Chun quickly responded, "This lord has no interest in an old man who is 1 foot in the grave." This sentence made Paisia even angrier. Coldly looking at the private room of the sword sect, Paisia didn't say anything. He felt that he had underestimated the sect master of the sword sect. Although he was a little kid, his anger was first class. Compared to Paisia's anger, Shao Chun was smiling faintly on the sword gate side. Obviously, he was in a good mood after tricking the coiling heaven gate a little. As for the 100 immortal spirit pills, although it was a pity to lose them, what could he do about it? Moreover, the sword sect's immortal spirit immortals' immortal sect's immortal sect. Beauty. S's beauties is Xiao's beauty. If he didn't, wouldn't we have suffered a great loss? Looking at the smiling face of Shao Chun, Hong Xiao asked curiously. When Shao Chun called out the bid of 90 million, the women were all worried for Shao Chun. Facing Hong Xiao's question, Shao Chun smiled and said, "Because he is stupid." Shao Chun was in a good mood. However, the auction wouldn't stop because of the sword sect and the heavenly sect. Soon, the bidding for the next item began. In the following period of time, Shao Chun didn't make any moves because he didn't come across any pills that were useful to him. However, Shao Chun didn't stay idle. As long as the heavenly sect wanted a pill, Shao Chun would raise the price as long as the heavenly sect bid. Of course, Shao Chun's bid was different from Paisia's. Shao Chun didn't bid much each time. To put it bluntly, Shao Chun's price did not exceed the bottom line of Hetian Gate, so Hetian Gate did not give up and would raise the price again. As long as Hetian Gate raised the price again, Shao Chun would stop in time. As a result, although each item didn't seem to surpass the Heavenly Gate's confidence, the accumulation of these items caused the Heavenly Gate to consume far more spiritual sense than expected. Shao Chun didn't raise the price of any single item too high, and it didn't seem to have much effect on the coiling Heaven Gate. However, after accumulating the price, Shao Chun did make the coiling Heaven Gate pay a lot more spirit stones. Originally, a pill could be bought for 5 million spirit stones, but Shao Chun raised the price by 500,000 spirit stones, so the coiling Heaven Gate could only raise the price. Hundreds of thousands of spirit stones for a single pill didn't seem much, but when 2, 3, or even more than 10 pills were added together, the price difference was still a few million spirit stones. Every time Xiao Chun messed up the auction, Passia could be said to be gnashing his teeth in anger. However, there was nothing he could do because Xiao Chun knew how to stop in time, so Passia couldn't do anything. Damn brat. Passia cursed fiercely. If this wasn't the Dan Valley, Passia probably wouldn't have been able to hold back an attack. Passia was very angry with Xiao Chun, but at this moment, the last pill was auctioned. It was an extremely precious, vast origin pill. This vast origin pill was a little special, precious, and extremely difficult to refine. However, it didn't have much use, or it could be said that very few people would benefit from it. Basically, ordinary cultivators wouldn't use this vast origin pill. However, for the Coiling Heaven Gate, this vast origin pill was a true treasure. Due to the cultivation method of the Coiling Heaven Gate, they had to use this vast origin pill if they wanted to break through to the absolute realm. As soon as the vast origin pill was auctioned, Yang Song immediately looked at Xiao Chun and said, "Sect Master, this vast origin pill is very useful to the Coiling Heaven Gate. They will definitely try to obtain it at all costs. Moreover, it is said that the only son of the Coiling Heaven Gate's Sect Master is now only a step away from breaking through to the absolute realm. Therefore, they probably won't give up on this vast origin pill. The Coiling Heaven Gate wouldn't give up on this vast origin pill. No matter what price they had to pay, they would think of a way to obtain it." A hint of a smile flashed through Xiao Chen's eyes when he heard this. Then, Passia called out a bid. 10 million. The starting price was 10 million. Passia called out without hesitation. Under normal circumstances, there wouldn't be many people bidding for this vast origin pill. Therefore, it wasn't impossible to buy the vast origin pill with 10 million. Unfortunately, Passia met Xiao Chun this time. As soon as he called out, Xiao Chen's voice rang out. 10 million? As one of the 10 great Ling Tian sects, is this all the Coiling Heaven Gate has? Forget it. I'll bid 20 million. 20 million? In an instant, Xiao Chun directly doubled the price. Passia's anger was on the verge of exploding when he heard this, and he directly crushed the teacup in his hand. Passia was furious as he looked coldly at the private room where the Sword Sect members were in. If it was any other pill, Passia would definitely give up at this time. However, he couldn't do that with the vast origin pill because the Sect Master had personally ordered him to obtain this pill no matter what price he had to pay. He was already regretting provoking the Sword Sect for no reason. Now, Xiao Chun had done almost nothing in the entire auction. He was completely opposing the Coiling Heaven Gate. After taking a deep breath, Passia had no choice but to call out a bid of 21 million. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1992. 21 million. Passia had no choice but to bid. However, as expected, Xiao Chun bid once more. This time, the price was even more exaggerated. Xiao Chun directly raised it to 30 million. 21 million. Passia had no choice but to bid. However, as expected, Xiao Chun bid once more. This time, the price was even more exaggerated. Xiao Chun directly raised it to 30 million. 30 million. Although it wasn't that the Heavenly Sect couldn't take out such a price, it was enough to make them feel pain for a while. The corner of his mouth twitched. Then, Passia couldn't help but shout, "Xiao Chun, what is the meaning of this?" "What do you mean?" "This auction is based on one's ability. If you think it's too expensive, then don't bid. No one is forcing you." Hearing this, Xiao Chen's voice was filled with mockery. Sitting in the private room, Xiao Chun had a faint smile on his face. "Old thing, who asked you to purposely find trouble? This time, I want to get the vast origin pill. If I don't make you vomit blood, I won't stop." Xiao Chun clearly didn't have any intention of stopping. The Sword Sect and Heavenly Sect already had enmity. Moreover, Passia was purposely finding trouble with them. It would be strange if Xiao Chun let him off so easily. 30 million. Along with Xiao Chen's words, Passia clenched his fists. He was on the verge of exploding. He really wanted to kill Xiao Chun on the spot. However, Passia knew that it was impossible. Not to mention that Xiao Chun definitely had an End Realm expert protecting him. Even if he didn't, the Dan Valley wouldn't just sit there and do nothing. After all, this was the Dan Valley. Even the Heavenly Sect couldn't behave atrociously here and break the rules of the Dan Valley. Moreover, the most important thing was that the Heavenly Sect only had one End Realm expert on this trip to the Dan Valley. If they really fought with the Sword Sect, they wouldn't have any advantage. Passia took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart as he made another bid. Following that, the auction for the finale pill became the stage for the Sword Sect and the Heavenly Sect. Only the two parties were still bidding against each other. As for the others, they had already given up. However, even though both sides were trading, anyone could tell that the Heavenly Gate was being played by the Sword Sect. The Sword Sect was deliberately raising the price, and the Heavenly Gate couldn't do anything about it. In the end, the price of the vast origin pill had been raised to 49 million by Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun said with a smile, "Don't worry about it. This is my limit. If you raise the price again, I really don't want it anymore." This was the final bid. Xiao Chun had said this many times before. Hearing this, Passia was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. However, he had no choice. After a moment of silence, he still gritted his teeth and made a bid of 50 million. 50 million for a vast origin pill. This price, how should he put it? If someone who didn't know the situation heard this, their first reaction would be that this person's head was stuck in a door. What a fool. However, even if Passia knew this, what could he do? He had to get this vast origin pill. The price of 50 million made Passia's heart bleed. Fortunately, Xiao Chun didn't raise the price this time. This made Passia finally heave a sigh of relief. In the end, the second day of the auction also came to an end. The finale pill was also bought by the Heavenly Gate for a sky-high price of 50 million high-grade spirit stones. However, no one congratulated this result because everyone knew that they had been tricked by the Sword Sect. Otherwise, the price of the vast origin pill wouldn't even be worth 20 million, let alone 50 million. After the auction ended, Xiao Chun and his group left the private room. Just as they walked out of the private room, Pashuel led 7 or 8 Heavenly Gate disciples and walked towards them. Passia's gaze directly landed on Xiao Chun. Thick killing intent flashed in his eyes. At the same time, Wu Huan immediately came to Xiao Chen's side to guard against Passia and be prepared to attack at any time. With Wu Huan beside him, and this being the Dan Valley, Xiao Chun naturally didn't fear Passia. So what if he was an End Realm expert? Xiao Chun revealed a faint smile and spoke first. Vice Sect Master Passia, you don't have to be so polite. Anyway, I have no use for this vast origin pill. You can take it. Passia's face twisted when he heard Xiao Chen's words. He glared at Xiao Chun and said viciously, "Xiao Chun, what are you waiting for?" "Good, very good. My Heavenly Gate will remember this. In the future, we will personally visit the Sword Sect." In terms of strength, the Heavenly Gate was naturally stronger than the Sword Sect. However, there was a limit to how strong they were. Moreover, the biggest difference between the two sides was that the Heavenly Gate had super experts that surpassed the End Realm, while the Sword Sect didn't. However, the Sect Master of the Heavenly Gate was said to be in seclusion. As such, the Heavenly Gate couldn't attack the Sword Sect at this time. Knowing that Passia was bluffing, Xiao Chun naturally didn't fear him. They were enemies, and since it was already like this, with Xiao Chen's temper, he naturally wouldn't give face to the Heavenly Gate. With a cold smile, Xiao Chun didn't back down. Anytime, the Sword Sect was no longer the Sword Sect of the past. Although it wasn't as strong as the Heavenly Gate now, one day, the Sword Sect will be able to turn the situation around. At that time, the Heavenly Gate will be able to pull down the Sword Sect. At that time, the Sword Sect would give them a taste of their own medicine. Speaking of which, Jun Weiyao wasn't in the Great Thousand World. Otherwise, if Jun Weiyao was here, Xiao Chun would probably dare to lead the Sword Sect to attack the Heavenly Gate. It should be known that Jun Weiyao's strength was definitely above that of the Heavenly Gate's Sect Master. There was no doubt about this. Seeing that Xiao Chun wasn't afraid of the Heavenly Gate at all, Passia was even angrier. He fiercely said, "All right, let's wait and see. After saying that, he turned around and left. However, before Passia could take 2 steps, he heard Xiao Chun say, "I'm really sorry to have made Vice Sect Master Passia spend so much money today." Hearing this, Passia's footsteps paused, but he quickly left without looking back. Today, he had experienced the means of the new sect master of the Sword Sect. Indeed, Passia didn't expect this. After an entire day of the auction, Xiao Chun successfully made Passia suffer a great loss. At the same time, after the people who participated in the auction today left, they all talked about what happened at the auction today. Of course, the people were most interested in talking about the Sword Sect and the Heavenly Gate. The 2 sects didn't give way to each other, and the new sect master of the Sword Sect repeatedly made Passia suffer. The open and covert competition between the 2 sects made everyone happy. Everyone liked this kind of liveliness. However, after leaving the auction house, Xiao Chun actually felt a little helpless. Although he made Passia suffer a great loss today, he didn't get the divine spirit pill that he wanted. Therefore, today's result couldn't be considered perfect. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1993. The immortal spirit pill had been taken away by Passia of the Heavenly Sect. Although he had been cheated, Xiao Chun was still a little unhappy. The immortal spirit pill had been taken away by Passia of the Heavenly Sect. Although he had been cheated, Xiao Chun was still a little unhappy. Does this count as killing 1,000 enemies at the cost of 800 of my own men? Xiao Chun muttered helplessly, but there was nothing he could do. He returned to his residence. There was still the last day of the auction tomorrow. He didn't know if he would be able to find the pill he needed. In this Dan Valley auction, Xiao Chun had only won the comprehension pill so far. His harvest wasn't that great. Xiao Chun didn't have much hope for tomorrow's auction. The reason was simple. The Heavenly Sect definitely wouldn't let him have a good time. Therefore, if he had to pay a huge price to win a pill, Xiao Chun would probably choose to give up. The night passed silently. When the auction began the next day, Xiao Chun and his group came to the auction house again. Today was the last day of the auction. They went to the same private room as before. At the same time, Passia and the people from the Heavenly Sect did the same. The auction continued as usual. As it was the last day of the auction, there were many good things in the auction today. As time passed, expensive pills were auctioned off one by one. Unfortunately, these pills were either already in the Sword Sect, or they weren't of much use to Xiao Chun. However, it wasn't that they didn't gain anything. During this time, Wu Huan, Yang Song, and the others also made their bids. They all won some pills that were useful to them. During this entire process, Passia and the people from the Heavenly Sect didn't say anything. It was as if they had forgotten what had happened yesterday. Yesterday, he had been cheated by Xiao Chun. However, today, Passia didn't make any trouble for him. As a result, Xiao Chun was happy to be idle. This old guy had probably learned his lesson. Xiao Chun was more than happy to have the Hetian sect stay out of the way. Unfortunately, after an entire day of the auction, Xiao Chun did not come across a single pill that was useful to him. On the last day of the auction, Xiao Chun and his group left the auction house. They felt a little helpless, but it wasn't a big deal. Since they didn't get much from the auction, they could only ask the people of the Dan Valley for medicine. Although the Dan Valley had auctioned off some immortal spirit pills, the Dan Valley definitely still had some in stock. Xiao Chun planned to ask the higher-ups of the Dan Valley for the pills tomorrow. Xiao Chun was not in a hurry to leave the Dan Valley. After all, he still needed to enter the 100 Spirits realm. This was something that Jun Wuya had obtained through a favor. He could not waste it. Xiao Chun and the others returned to their residence. However, as soon as they entered the courtyard, they saw Dan Xingyang, who was sitting in the courtyard, waiting for them. Upon seeing Dan Xingyang, Wu Huan, Yang Song, and the others hurriedly bowed respectfully. In response, Dan Xingyang smiled slightly, then looked at Xiao Chun and said with a smile, "Little guy, I heard that you had some conflicts with the Hetian sect. You didn't get much from the auction, right?" Xiao Chun did not find it strange that Dan Xingyang knew about his conflict with the Hetian sect. Hearing this, Xiao Chen nodded slightly and did not refute. Seeing this, Dan Qingyang laughed and waved his hand. 10 J bottles appeared in front of Xiao Chen. Here, take it as a gift from this old man. Dan Qingyang naturally wouldn't be stingy when he made a move. The 10 J bottles were filled with immortal spirit pills that were personally refined by Dan Qingyang. The quality of these pills was definitely higher than the 10 bottles of immortal spirit pills that were sold at the auction. Looking at the 10 bottles of immortal spiritual pills, Xiao Chun was slightly taken aback. However, he quickly cupped his hands and thanked Dan Qingyang. He did not reject it. After all, these immortal spiritual pills were very useful to him. Seeing that Xiao Chun accepted it without hesitation, Dan Qingyang smiled and said, "All right, have a good rest today. I will send someone to look for you tomorrow." The auction had ended. According to the schedule, Dan Qingyang would open the 100 Spirits realm tomorrow and allow Xiao Chun to enter to cultivate. Hearing Dan Qingyang's words, Xiao Chun nodded. However, he said with some difficulty, "Senior, about the 100 Spirits realm, I wonder if Xiao Chun wanted to ask if he could allow Qin Shu and the other girls, as well as Xiao Xiao, to enter the 100 Spirits realm with him. After all, the 100 Spirits realm was a rare place for cultivation. If he allowed the girls to enter, they would definitely benefit a lot." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Dan Qingyang laughed and scolded. "You little brat, forget it. Let's go together then." Opening the 100 Spirits realm required a lot of resources. However, since it had already been opened, there was not much difference between one person and a few people. Since Xiao Chun had asked, Dan Qingyang did not reject him. After all, with Dan Valley's financial resources, although opening the 100 Spirits realm was a little painful for Dan Qingyang, it was not a big deal. Seeing that Dan Qingyang had agreed, Xiao Chun was elated. He cupped his hands and thanked Dan Qingyang again. Then, Dan Qingyang left, and Xiao Chun and the others left to rest. It was a silent night. The next morning, Qian Yu found Xiao Chun early in the morning. According to Dan Qingyang's instructions, Qian Yu came to invite Xiao Chun and the others to enter the 100 Spirits realm. Qian Yu was shocked. He had never imagined that Dan Qingyang would open the 100 Spirits secret realm for Xiao Chun to cultivate. It had to be known that even Pill Valley's disciples would find it difficult to enter the 100 Spirits secret realm. But this time, Dan Qingyang had opened it for Xiao Chun. Qian Yu did not know about the meeting between Dan Qingyang and Jun Wuya. However, she could guess that since Dan Qingyang was willing to open the 100 Spirits realm, it meant that there was an unknown relationship between him and Xiao Chun. Qian Yu did not dare to neglect someone who was valued by Dan Qingyang. She was even more enthusiastic than before. She called Qin Shu, Xiao Xiao, Xiao Chun, and the others and left the courtyard with Qian Yu. The Dan Valley was huge, and the entrance to the 100 Spirits realm was not in the Heavenly Pill City. Qian Yu asked tentatively as they walked towards the entrance of the 100 Spirits realm. Sect leader Xiao Chun, I wonder if you and Lord Valley Master. Qian Yu was curious as to why Dan Qingyang would open the 100 Spirits realm and let Xiao Chun and the others enter to cultivate. In the face of Qian Yu's curiosity, Xiao Chun did not hide it. Besides, there was no point in hiding it. "Oh, it was my master who told Senior Dan Qingyang." "Master?" When Qian Yu heard Xiao Chen's question, she immediately thought of Jun Wuya. Qian Yu was stunned. If that was the case, it made sense. After all, Jun Wuya and Dan Qingyang had a good relationship. However, since Jun Wuya was willing to speak up for Xiao Chun, it seemed like Xiao Chun had a very high position in Jun Wuya's heart. At least, it was not something that his 4 senior brothers and senior sisters could compare to. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1994. Qian Yu guessed in her heart, but she did not show it on her face. She brought Xiao Chun and the rest to the depths of the Dan Valley, where the entrance to the 100 Spirits mystery realm was located. Qian Yu guessed in her heart, but she did not show it on her face. She brought Xiao Chun and the rest to the depths of the Dan Valley, where the entrance to the 100 Spirits mystery realm was located. Dan Qingyang was already waiting at the entrance of the 100 Spirits mystery realm. When Qian Yu saw Dan Xingyang, she bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, Valley Master." "Greetings, Senior." Like Qian Yu, Xiao Chun and the rest also cupped their hands and bowed. Dan Xingyang nodded, slightly in response to everyone's greetings. He then looked at Xiao Chun and the rest and said seriously, "The Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm is one of the cultivation mystery realms in the Dan Valley. However, it is a little different from the other cultivation mystery realms. As the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm has broken some of the laws of heaven and earth, there are many benefits to cultivating in it. However, at the same time, there are some side effects. As long as you follow the requirements, these side effects can be minimized." Before entering the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm, Dan Xingyang had something to tell Xiao Chun. He did not want to see Xiao Chun crippled after entering the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. According to Dan Xingyang, although the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm had an incredible effect, there were a few restrictions, or rather, things to take note of. First of all, everyone could only enter the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm once in their lifetime. This was because the second time would cause irreversible damage to their body. Secondly, no matter who it was, they could only stay in the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm for half a year. Once they exceeded half a year, they would also cause irreversible damage to their body. Lastly, and most importantly, after breaking through in the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm, they could not break through their cultivation level for at least 5 years. Otherwise, their foundation would be damaged. The 3 things to take note of could not be sloppy. As for why there were so many things to take note of in the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm, it was completely related to its incredible effect. Previously, Dan Xingyang had already said that because the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm had broken some of the laws of heaven and earth, cultivating in the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm could be said to be cheating. This was because when one was in the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm, there was no barrier or comprehension. To put it simply, as long as one had enough spiritual energy or pills, one's cultivation, without any obstacles. No comprehension of comprehension of comprehension of heaven and earth. There was no need to comprehend, and there was no barrier to break through. Hearing Dan Xingyang's words, Xiao Chun and the others all gasped. This was too heaven-defying. With that, as long as he had enough spiritual energy and good pills, wouldn't he be able to break through to the end realm without any obstructions? It was like a cheating device. However, it was precisely because of such a heaven-defying effect that the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm had many requirements. The 3 requirements that Dan Xingyang had mentioned earlier had to be engraved in their hearts. Otherwise, it would definitely cause irreversible damage to them. At that time, the losses would outweigh the gains. After telling Xiao Chun and the rest of the things to take note of, Dan Xingyang said seriously, "Remember what I said just now. Otherwise, when the time comes, your cultivation will not be able to improve. In the worst case, your life will be in danger. At that time, even I will be helpless." Facing Dan Xingyang's serious reminder, Xiao Chun and the rest nodded seriously. Seeing this, Dan Xingyang opened the entrance of the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. Then, Xiao Chun and the rest walked in. This time, Xiao Chun grabbed the opportunity. Not only did he bring Qin Shu, Xiao Chun, Xiao Qing, Bai Ruyue, even Qing Yao, Fei Mei, and Enlan followed Xiao Chun into the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. After the group entered the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm, Dan Xingyang closed the entrance. Then, he looked at Qian Yu and said, "You stay here. After half a year, remember to open the exit and let them leave." He asked Qian Yu to stay here and not let anyone get close. Hearing this, Qian Yu nodded respectfully. At first glance, there was nothing special about the Hundred Spirits Secret Realm. It seemed to be a secret room. Inside the secret room, there were dozens of cattail hassocks scattered about. Other than that, there was nothing else. However, although it looked simple, Xiao Chun felt that there was a big difference between the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm and the outside world. In other words, in the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm, it felt as if some shackles had been broken. In here, one would feel much more enlightened. Xiao Chun's intuition told him that if he cultivated here, breaking through his cultivation level would be as simple as eating and drinking. In fact, what Xiao Chun did not know was that the reason why the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm was so heaven-defying was because the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm actually blocked the rules of heaven and earth. In here, there were no rules of heaven and earth. Hence, when a cultivator broke through, he naturally did not need to follow any rules of heaven and earth. It could be said that it was heaven-defying. After taking a deep breath, Xiao Chun said, "It is indeed heaven-defying." Without wasting any time, the group found prayer mats and sat down cross-legged. Then, they immediately began to cultivate. Although they could only stay in the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm for half a year, it should be known that the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm was not bound by the rules of heaven and earth. As such, cultivating in the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm for half a year was equivalent to cultivating in the outside world for 100 years. Xiao Chun and the rest were cultivating in the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. In Heavenly Pill City, Wu Huan and Ji Yin were sitting opposite each other, drinking and chatting. Ji Yin came here to thank the Sword Sect. After all, Xiao Chun was the reason why Xiao Xiao was able to enter the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. If it was not for Xiao Chun, Xiao Xiao would not have been able to enter the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. Ji Yin naturally knew about the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. She also knew that it was a cultivation mystery realm that countless people in the Great Thousand World dreamed of. Unfortunately, other than the people from Dan Valley, it was almost impossible for others to enter the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. If it was not for Jun Wuya, Dan Xingyang probably would not have allowed Xiao Chun and the rest to enter the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. She had already told the Palace Master of the Moon Palace about Xiao Xiao entering the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. In response, the Palace Master of the Moon Palace only replied with one sentence: "Be on good terms with the Sword Sect." Ji Yin naturally knew what it meant to be on good terms with the Sword Sect. Hence, Ji Yin personally visited the Sword Sect early in the morning and gave many good things to the Sword Sect. Ji Yin guessed that Xiao Zhao's cultivation would be able to break through 2 to 3 small realms in half a year after entering the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. However, it was hard to say. Xiao Xiao might be able to break through 4 small realms. After all, without being bound by the rules of heaven and earth, it was hard to say how many realms she could break through. However, it was undeniable that Xiao Xiao was able to enter the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm to cultivate and save at least 100 years of time. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 1995. The Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm was a place that many warriors in the Great Thousand World dreamed of entering. Unfortunately, very few people had the luck or the honor to enter. The Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm was a place that many warriors in the Great Thousand World dreamed of entering. Unfortunately, very few people had the luck or the honor to enter. This time around, Xiao Xiao had gotten the opportunity because of Xiao Chun. This was a great opportunity. Ji Yin represented the Palace Master of Moon Palace to express her goodwill to Wu Huan. Wu Huan was well aware of this. Furthermore, Wu Huan and Ji Yin knew each other. Now that one of them was the deputy sect leader of Sword Sect, and the other was the deputy Palace Master of Moon Palace, they naturally did not feel pressure to talk to each other. Wu Huan naturally would not reject Moon Palace's goodwill. After all, Moon Palace was one of the 10 great Ling Tian sects, and their strength was even stronger than Heavenly Sect. Being on good terms with Moon Palace was beneficial to the Sword Sect. As such, Wu Huan naturally would not object. Xiao Chun and the rest did not know what was happening in the outside world. At this time, Xiao Chun and the rest were trying their best to break through their cultivation in the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. Everyone knew that they only had half a year. After half a year, regardless of their cultivation, they would have to leave the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm. Moreover, each warrior could only enter the Hundred Spirits Mystery Realm once. Any more than that would not only not benefit them, but would also cause irreversible damage. Therefore, half a year's time was very tight for Xiao Chun and the rest. As for how much they could break through in half a year, it all depended on themselves. Due to his tempered battle body, Xiao Chun swallowed the elixirs like a whale swallowing water. He was not afraid that his meridians would not be able to withstand it. Xiao Qin's physical strength, including the meridians in his body, was stronger than Long Qing, who was from the Dragon Clan. Therefore, the speed at which Xiao Chun refined the elixirs was much faster than ordinary warriors. Half a year's time was neither long nor short. Time passed day by day, and in the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. After cultivating bitterly in the 100 Spirits Mystery Realm for half a year, Xiao Chun and the others finally left the 100 Spirits Mystery Realm. Qianyu was still waiting there, but Dan Xingyang was nowhere to be seen. She personally opened the exit for Xiao Chun and the others to leave. When she saw Xiao Chun, Qianyu took the initiative to say with a smile, "Little friend Xiao Chun, how was it? Did you gain a lot?" He was already addressing Xiao Chun as little friend, which was a lot more intimate. In response, Xiao Chun also smiled and replied, "I did gain some benefits. Thank you, senior." Haha, why are you thanking me? This is the Valley Master's decision. Since you have come out of seclusion, let's go. I have already prepared a banquet in the Heavenly Pill City to celebrate Xiao Qin's success, Qianyu said. After cultivating in seclusion in the 100 Spirits Mystery Realm for half a year, Xiao Qin's cultivation had indeed improved a lot. From the beginner realm of the Enlightenment Realm to the Great Circle of the Enlightenment Realm, he had broken through 4 small realms. As for Qin Shu and the others, they had also broken through from the Immortal Emperor Realm to the beginner realm of the Enlightenment Realm. To be able to break through to the Enlightenment Realm in the 100 Spirits Mystery Realm, Qin Shu and the others had worked very hard. The group returned to the Heavenly Pill City. In the largest restaurant in the Heavenly Pill City, Qianyu hosted a banquet for Xiao Chun and the others, as well as the people from the Sword Sect and the Moon Palace. The people from the Moon Palace, including Jiyin, had been staying in the Dan Valley for half a year, waiting for Xiao Xiao to come out of seclusion. After half a year, Xiao Xiao's cultivation had also broken through from the Enlightenment Realm to the beginner realm of the Dao Realm, which was slightly higher than Xiao Chen's cultivation. However, the one who had improved faster was undoubtedly Xiao Chun. After all, when Xiao Chun first came to the Great Thousand World, his cultivation base was only at the Immortal Emperor Realm. Now, in just a few decades, Xiao Chen's cultivation base had already reached the Great Circle of the Enlightenment Realm, and he was only one step away from Xiao Xiao. It could be said that Xiao Chun had gradually caught up with Xiao Xiao in just a few decades. This made Xiao Xiao happy and surprised at the same time. After all, Xiao Xiao was very confident in his own cultivation talent. Even so, Xiao Chun was still catching up to him step by step. It was also because of the end of the auction in the Dan Valley that the Heavenly Pill City became much quieter. Although there were still people who came to the Dan Valley to ask for medicine, the number of people who came was obviously much lesser than during the auction. In the restaurant, everyone took their seats. Xiao Chun and Qianyu sat together and took the initiative to greet each other. Xiao Chun toasted Qianyu with a cup of wine, and both of them drank it in one gulp. After that, Qianyu looked at Xiao Chun and said, "Little friend Xiao Chun, you must remember that you must not break through again within the next 5 years. You must prioritize stabilizing your foundation. You must settle down and eliminate the side effects of the 100 Spirits Secret Realm." Qianyu had entered the 100 Spirits Secret Realm before, so she knew what to pay attention to next. Everything about the 100 Spirits Secret Realm was good except for the side effects. This was also the only problem of the 100 Spirits Secret Realm. Therefore, more attention was needed. Upon hearing Qianyu's words, Xiao Chun nodded and said, "Thank you for your reminder, senior. I will definitely pay attention to it." "That's good. Come, let's drink." Qianyu laughed and said. Everyone drank to their heart's content during the banquet. It was late at night before everyone left one after another. After returning to their residence, Qin Shu and the other girls, as well as by Riyue and Xiao Qing, went to rest. Xiao Chun, Wu Huan, and Yang Song sat in the courtyard and drank tea. At the same time, Xiao Chun also asked if anything had happened in the Sword Sect during the 6 months that he had been in seclusion. In response to Xiao Chun's question, Wu Huan answered truthfully. During the 6 months, everything was fine in the Sword Sect. Furthermore, the situation in Wuzhou was gradually stabilizing. Although Lin Qing and Li Ku had taken action and destroyed many of the local forces of Wu State, it was not enough. Because of this, at least on the surface, none of the major forces of Wu State dared to openly defy the Sword Gate, regardless of whether they were truly convinced or not. There was no need to worry about the Sword Sect for the time being. Zhou Song and the others had handled the Song Xing very well. Hearing this, Xiao Qin nodded and said, "That's good. However, it's time for us to return. After all, the Sixth Sect Conference is about to begin." Xiao Chun still had to participate in the Sixth Sect Conference. As the sect master of the Sword Sect, Xiao Chun naturally could not be absent from the Sixth Sect Conference. Hearing this, Yang Song nodded in agreement. At the same time, Wu Huan said with a smile, "Junior brother, there is one more thing that you will definitely be happy to hear." "Oh, what is it?" Hearing this, Xiao Qin was puzzled. He Xin arrived at the Sword Sect a month ago. Second senior brother sent a letter saying that he had already convinced He Xin. He Xin is probably tempted, but he said that there are some things that can only be decided after meeting junior brother. Wu Huan replied. He Xin had already arrived at the Sword Sect and had already stayed. Although she had not clearly expressed her willingness to join the Sword Sect, since she was willing to stay, it meant that He Xin was actually interested. In this way, it could be said that she was almost certain, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1996. Upon hearing Wu Huan's words, Xiao Qin's mood improved greatly. He didn't expect He Xin to have already arrived at the Sword Sect. This was truly a pleasant surprise. Upon hearing Wu Huan's words, Xiao Qin's mood improved greatly. He didn't expect He Xin to have already arrived at the Sword Sect. This was truly a pleasant surprise. Immediately, Xiao Qin looked at Wu Huan and smiled. It's all thanks to third senior brother this time. If it weren't for third senior brother, He Xin probably wouldn't have gone to the Sword Sect. Upon hearing Xiao Qin's words, Wu Huan smiled and didn't say anything. Although Xiao Qin was the sect master of the Sword Sect, and Wu Huan and Zhou Song were the vice sect masters of the Sword Sect, the three of them were still used to addressing each other as senior brother in private. Not only to Wu Huan and Zhou Song, but to others like Song Xing, Yang Song, and the others, Xiao Qin also referred to himself as a junior in private. This was also Xiao Qin's method of gathering people's hearts. His cultivation breakthrough and He Xion's arrival could be considered as a double blessing. Xiao Qin didn't cultivate that night. After all, he had already cultivated in the 100 Spirits realm for half a year. Now that he had just come out of seclusion, Xiao Qin also wanted to relax. After a night of silence, early the next morning, Xiao Qin and the others prepared to leave and set off for the Sword Sect. First, they bid farewell to the people from the Moon Palace. However, upon hearing that Xiao Qin and Wu Huan were leaving, Xiao immediately expressed that she wanted to return to the Sword Sect with Xiao Qin and the others. In response, Xiao looked at Jin and said, "Vice Palace Master, I also want to go and take a look at the Sixth Sect Assembly. Is that all right?" Xiao obviously wanted to go with Xiao Qin and the others. Hearing this, Jin shook her head helplessly, then nodded in agreement. "All right, but you can't mess around. Otherwise, your master won't forgive you when you return." "Got it." Hearing this, Xiao playfully stuck out her tongue. Just like that, Xiao followed Xiao Qin and the others to the Sword Sect. Before leaving Dan Valley, Xiao Qin naturally went to say goodbye to Qianyu. As for Dan Xingyang, Xiao Qin asked Qianyu to take him to express his gratitude. He naturally wanted to say goodbye to Dan Xingyang in person, but Dan Xingyang wasn't easy to meet, so he had no choice but to ask Qianyu for help. As for the departure of Xiao Qin and the others, Qianyu personally sent them off. It was only when they reached the entrance of the Dan Valley that Xiao Qin and the others parted ways with Qianyu and left the Dan Valley. It had to be said that Xiao Qin and the others had gained a lot from this trip to the Dan Valley. At the very least, everyone's cultivation had improved tremendously. They returned to the Sword Sect. With the current status and strength of the Sword Sect in the Great Thousand World, no one would be foolish enough to find trouble with them on the way. Moreover, Xiao Xiao, the holy maiden of the Moon Palace, was there as well. They returned to the Sword Sect safely. When the news that Xiao Chun and the others had returned to the Sword Sect spread, Song Xing and Zhou Song quickly arrived at the main hall. Qin Shu, Xiao Qing, Bai Riyue, Qing Yao, Qing Luo, and Xiao Xiao had already gone to rest, while Xiao Chun, Wu Huan, Yang Song, and the others gathered in the main hall. First, they congratulated Xiao Chun on his breakthrough in cultivation. Then, they talked about the Sword Sect. Finally, they talked about He Xian, which was what Xiao Chun was most concerned about. Looking at Zhou Song, Xiao Chun asked, "Second senior brother, is He Xian still in the Sword Sect?" "Yes, but he said that he has something to discuss with you personally before deciding whether to stay or leave. However, he didn't tell me the details," Zhou Song replied when he heard Xiao Chen's question. Xiao Chen smiled faintly when he heard Zhou Song's reply. "All right, I'll go and see him." Nothing much had happened in the Sword Sect. Everything had been taken care of by Zhou Song and Song Xing, so Xiao Chen didn't need to worry about it. As such, Xiao Chen planned to see He Xian as soon as possible to see what he had to say to him. After asking about He Xian's residence, Xiao Chun went to see He Xian alone. It was a very ordinary small courtyard. Xiao Chun gently knocked on the courtyard door. After a while, a servant girl opened the door. When she saw that it was Xiao Chun, the servant girl hurriedly bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Sect Master." Where is Senior He Xian?" Xiao Chun asked with a slight nod. The servant girl replied respectfully, "He's in the backyard." This servant girl was obviously arranged by Zhou Song to take care of He Xian. Hearing this, Xiao Chun walked towards the backyard. As expected, when he arrived at the backyard, Xiao Chun immediately saw He Xian resting in the backyard. When he saw Xiao Chun, He Xian stood up, and Xiao Chun quickly walked over to greet him. "Senior He Xian, Sect Master Xiao Chun." The two of them greeted each other and then sat opposite each other. He Xian looked at Xiao Chun and didn't beat around the bush. "I understand Sect Master Xiao Chen's intention. However, I have a few questions for Sect Master Xiao Chun." "Senior, please go ahead," Xiao Chun replied with a smile. Actually, He Xian didn't have any weird requests. However, he was used to being lazy and suddenly wanted to join a sect, so he wasn't used to it. If it wasn't for the fact that Wu Huan and He Xian knew each other and that Wu Huan was also in the Sword Sect, maybe He Xian wouldn't agree. He had roamed the world alone for so many years. Now that he was an End Realm expert, He Xian didn't have the passion he had when he was young. He always thought about how big the world was. The current He Xian preferred a stable and peaceful life. This was why he wanted to join the Sword Sect. Also, He Xian was a sword cultivator. In his eyes, the Sword Sect was a holy-like existence. With that, He Xian wanted to see whether or not the Sword Sect could regain its glory under Xiao Chen's leadership. Due to the above reasons, He Xian chose to join the Sword Sect. However, at the same time, he had another condition, which was the He family. Before this, he went back to deal with the He family matters. However, after all, blood was thicker than water. Although He Xian said that he wouldn't interfere in the He family matters, he still couldn't let go of the He family. His only request was that Xiao Chang would agree to let the He family move to Jianzhou. With that, the He family's safety would be taken care of by the Sword Sect. This would solve his last bit of worry. Facing He Xian's request, Xiao Chen didn't hesitate and agreed. It was easy for the huge Jianzhou to accommodate the He family. This was why He Xian's request was nothing to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen nodded without hesitation. Then, He Xian officially announced that he had joined the Sword Sect. With that, the Sword Sect had one more End Realm expert, a total of 5 people. As an End Realm expert, after He Xian joined the Sword Sect, Xiao Chun was naturally the deputy sect leader. Song Xing, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Lin Qing, Li Ku, and He Xian. With that, the Sword Sect had a total of 6 deputy sect leaders. The number of End Realm experts exceeded that of the Black Emperor sect, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1997. I'll remember it in 1 second. Exciting, no pop-up window, free reading. Xian's edition increased the strength of the sword sect by a lot. Xiaochen was in a good mood. At the same time, he ordered the sword sect to appoint Xian as the deputy sect leader. The sword sect had another end realm expert, so everyone in the sword sect was naturally excited. This was because the stronger the sword sect was, the more benefits they, as disciples of the sword sect, would be able to obtain. Moreover, they would be respected even more outside. Along with the rise of Swords Gate, many of the outer disciples had personally experienced it. Compared to the past, when they were outside, many of the first-rate forces were now respectful to them. They did not dare to look down on them like they did before. This was the benefit that a strong sect brought to the disciples. The stronger the sword sect was, the more respected the disciples of the sword sect would be. This was an indisputable fact. With 6 deputy sect leaders, the sword sect had already shown signs of prosperity. Although they couldn't compare to the 10 great Lingtian sects in the entire Great Thousand World, apart from the 10 great Lingtian sects, the sword sect didn't fear any other powers. Xian's appointment and Wuzhou's gradual stabilization caused the sword sect to develop in a good direction. In the following period of time, Xiaochen also started to prepare for the 6th sect gathering. This was the first time the sword sect was participating in a gathering of the 6 superpowers. Xiaochen naturally wouldn't underestimate it. Time passed day by day. Nothing major happened in the sword sect. Everything was very stable. When there were less than 20 days to the 6th sect gathering, Longqing and Xianyuanling also successfully came out of seclusion. After this closed-door cultivation, Longqing and Xianyuanling had been cultivating bitterly ever since they came to the Great Thousand World. Now, both of their cultivations had successfully broken through to the comprehension state. However, because they were unable to enter the 100 Spirits secret realm this time, Qin Shu and the other girls had caught up with Longqing and Xianyuanling's cultivation. However, no matter what, everyone had improved greatly in the past few decades. Compared to when they were in the 8 Desolates world, it would not be an exaggeration to say that they had been reborn. When Longqing and Xianyuanling came out of seclusion, Xiaochen was naturally happy. Moreover, the 6th sect Great Assembly was just around the corner. Xiaochen also planned to let Longqing and Xianyuanling attend the 6th sect Great Assembly together. After all, ever since they came to the sword sect, the two of them had basically never left the sword sect. Now that they had successfully broken through to the enlightenment realm, it was time for them to go out for a walk. In the cave, Xiaochen told the two of them his thoughts. Regarding this, the two of them did not reject and nodded in agreement. Third brother, in just a few decades, you have developed the sword sect to such an extent. It is indeed shocking. Xianyuanling also exclaimed after agreeing to attend the 6th sect Great Assembly with Xiaochen. In these few decades, Longqing and Xianyuanling did not care about the matters of the sword sect. Of course, with Longqing and Xianyuanling's current status and cultivation, not many people in the sword sect would listen to them. After all, the two of them were not like Xiaochen. They were not from the sword sect. Xiaochen did not plan to let Longqing and Xianyuanling joined the sword sect now. According to Xiaochen's plan, he hoped that after the two of them broke through to the end realm, he would arrange for them to join the sword sect. This way, the sword sect will be able to accept them better. After all, their cultivation was there. So, the most important task for Longqing and Xianyuanling was to cultivate. Of course, with the entire sword sect as a shield and with the support of such rich cultivation resources, it should not be too difficult for the two of them to break through to the end realm. They just needed some time. Moreover, Junwia had given the two of them a huge opportunity. The ancestral dragon essence blood and the legacy of the reincarnation emperor. With such a huge opportunity, Longqing and Xianyuanling would definitely break through to the end realm. It was even possible for them to break through to the end realm. After all, the ancestral dragon and the reincarnation emperor were above the end realm. They didn't continue to cultivate and stayed in the sword sect for 3 to 4 days. Then, Xiaochen, Longqing, Xianyuanling, Zhou Song, and Wu Huan left the sword sect to participate in the sixth sect gathering. He only brought Zhou Song and Wu Huan, these two end realm experts. After all, the sixth sect gathering was not a battle. With the two of them protecting him, Xiao Chun didn't need to worry about his safety. Actually, if he didn't want to show off the strength of the sword sect, Xiao Chun wouldn't have brought both Zhou Song and Wu Huan. He only needed to bring one person. The preparations for the sixth sect gathering had started a year ago. The location of the sixth sect gathering was Taiqing Temple. Taiqing Temple could be said to be a sect with a long history. Although it wasn't as glorious as the sword sect, its history wasn't any weaker than the sword sect. It could be said to be a sect that was created at the same time as the sword sect. After so many years of development, Taiqing Temple was one of the top 6 powers. It was also said that they were much stronger than the Black Emperor sect. At least in terms of End Realm experts, Taiqing Temple had 7. Apart from the temple head, the 6 Taoist priests were all End Realm experts. With such strength, they were indeed stronger than the Black Emperor sect. According to the previous rules, the 6th sect conference was held in rotation. This time, it happened to be Taiqing Temple's turn to hold it. Because the sword sect was a new super first-rate force, although they were also in the 6th sect conference this time, the sword sect could only be considered a newcomer to this gathering between super first-rate forces that had been held many times. Qingzhou, where Taiqing Temple was located, was very far from Jianzhou, where the sword sect was located. This was why Xiao Chun and the others set off half a month in advance. Using the teleportation formation, Xiao Chun and the others quickly left Jianzhou. As it was on the way, they quickly arrived at Wuzhou. Although Wuzhou had stabilized, Lin Qing and Li Ku were still in charge of Wuzhou for a long time to intimidate the various powers in Wuzhou. Within Wuzhou, with the Sky Sword Sect as the foundation, the Sword Sect had also established a branch. Lin Qing and Li Ku were in charge. At the same time, Song Xing had invited the Talisman Masters of the Talisman Sect to build a teleportation formation between the Wuzhou and Jianzhou headquarters. With that, it would only take a blink of an eye to rush from Jianzhou headquarters to Wuzhou. They directly came to the Wuzhou branch. Along with Xiao Chen's arrival, Lin Qing and Li Ku were already waiting. Seeing Xiao Chen walk out of the teleportation formation, the two of them bowed respectfully. "Greetings, sect leader. Seniors, there is no need to be so polite. The two of you have contributed greatly to Wuzhou's stability." Seeing this, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1998. Xiao Chun and his group arrived at Wuzhou. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Lin Qing and Li Ku did not ask for credit. They blamed themselves for stabilizing Wuzhou. Although Xiao Chun had said so, how could the two of them really think that they had contributed much? Xiao Chun and his group arrived at Wuzhou. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Lin Qing and Li Ku did not ask for credit. They blamed themselves for stabilizing Wuzhou. Although Xiao Chun had said so, how could the two of them really think that they had contributed much? After a simple exchange of greetings, the group arrived at the main hall. After taking their seats, Lin Qing looked at Xiao Chun and asked, "Sect leader, are you planning to head to the 6th sect competition?" The 6th sect competition was about to begin. Lin Qing naturally knew about this matter. Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "Yes." The sword sect would definitely participate in the 6th sect competition. Moreover, they could not be careless. Seeing Xiao Chun nod, Lin Qing exhorted for a moment before opening his mouth to speak. "Sect leader, you have to be careful. During this period of time, Li Ku and I found out that the people from the Coiling Heaven sect seemed to be a little restless. They even wanted to infiltrate Wuzhou. However, the two of us detected them in advance and stopped them." Coiling Heaven sect. Upon hearing this, Xiao Chun was slightly stunned. Xiao Chun had not heard of this matter and immediately asked Lin Qing and Li Ku about it in detail. Faced with Xiao Chen's question, the two of them answered truthfully. According to the two of them, in the past 2 to 3 months, people from the Coiling Heaven sect would occasionally appear in Wuzhou. Moreover, These people from the Coiling Heaven sect would enter Wuzhou and secretly contact the various large factions in Wuzhou. Although they did not say what they were going to do, their actions were very suspicious. Therefore, after Lin Qing and Li Ke discussed, they immediately took action and directly chased these people from the Coiling Heaven sect out. However, they didn't kill them because Lin Qing and Li Ke had their reservations as well. After all, the Heavenly Sect was one of the 10 great Ling Tian sects. With the current strength of the Sword Sect, they were still no match for the Heavenly Sect. If they rashly killed the Heavenly Sect's disciples and incurred the wrath of the Heavenly Sect, it would not be a good thing for the Sword Sect. The Katian sect was restless and seemed to be plotting something. That was why Lin Qing told Xiao Chun to be careful. It should be known that among the 6 super first-rate forces, almost all of them were in contact with the 10 great Ling Tian sects. Among them, the Dragon Tiger sect had a deep relationship with the Heavenly Sect. It could even be said that the reason the Dragon Tiger sect was able to grow was mostly due to the Heavenly Sect. In this way, if the Heaven-merging sect really intended to go against the Sword Sect, then Xiao Chun would have to be careful during the 6th sect meeting. After telling the truth to Xiao Chun nodded slightly and smiled coldly. Looks like the Heaven-merging sect is really restless. Xiao Chun knew very well that the Sword Sect and the Heaven-merging sect would probably have a battle sooner or later. After all, the relationship between both parties was obvious. Moreover, the Heaven-merging sect seemed to have sensed the threat from the Sword Sect, so they probably wanted to make the first move to gain the upper hand. They were originally hostile forces, and now that the Sword Sect was rising rapidly, this was obviously not something the Heaven-merging sect wanted to see. In this way, it was reasonable for the Heaven-merging sect to make a move. However, even though the Heaven-merging sect was one of the 10 great Ling Tian sects, it was obviously impossible for them to make Xiao Chun surrender without putting up a fight. Xiao Chun would definitely not surrender without putting up a fight. Although the Sword Sect's current strength was not as good as the Heaven-merging sect, it was impossible for the Heaven-merging sect to make a move against the Sword Sect now. If that was really the case, then there was no need for the Heaven-merging sect to make such a sneaky move. It was precisely because the Heaven-merging sect probably did not have the time to deal with the Sword Sect that they would make such a move. This would give the Sword Sect some time. The 10 great Ling Tian sects seemed to be powerful, but in reality, they were all keeping each other in check. Moreover, it was not that the Sword Sect did not have a good relationship with any of the 10 great Ling Tian sects, such as the Dan Valley and the Moon Palace. Perhaps the Dan Valley could not be relied on. After all, the Dan Valley had always not interfered in any battles, but the Moon Palace was different. In terms of strength, the Moon Palace was slightly stronger than the Heaven-merging sect. Although the Moon Palace would not fight to the death with the Heaven-merging sect for the sake of the Sword Sect, the Moon Palace should not refuse to involve the Heaven-merging sect. Therefore, for the time being, Xiao Chun was not too afraid of the Heaven-merging sect. The Heaven-merging sect had their own estimations. In addition, the Heaven-merging sect would definitely have to pay a price if they wanted to take down the Sword Sect. As a result, the Heaven-merging sect was even more wary of taking action. After thinking through all this, Xiao Chun looked at Lin Qing and Li Ke and said, "The Wu province still needs the 2 of you to hold the fort. As for the people from the Heaven-merging sect, if they dare to appear in the Wu province in the future, capture them immediately and imprison them first. The Wu province is the territory of the Sword Sect. It is not a place where the Heaven-merging sect can come and go as they please." Previously, Lin Qing and Li Ke had only chased the cultivators from the Heaven-merging sect out of the Wu province. However, at this time, Xiao Chen's order was to capture them directly. In response, Lin Qing and Li Ke nodded in agreement. Since Xiao Chun had given the order, the 2 of them could only carry it out. After talking about the matters in the Wu province, Xiao Chun and his group did not stay in the Wu province for long. Soon, they once again set off for the Great Purity Temple. At the same time, after hearing Lin Qing's reminder, Xiao Chun sneered at the Dragon Tiger sect in his heart. Since the Dragon Tiger sect and the Heaven-merging sect had a close relationship, it was best not to do anything unwise. Otherwise, Xiaochun would not give them any face. The Sword Sect might not be a match for the Heaven-merging sect. However, the Sword Sect was not afraid of the Dragon Tiger sect. The strength of the Dragon Tiger sect was on par with the Black Emperor sect. If they really fought, it was still unknown who would emerge victorious. They rushed all the way to the Qing province where the Great Purity Temple was located. At the same time, as the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting approached, many cultivators gathered around the Great Purity Temple. Although these cultivators did not have the qualifications to participate in the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting, this did not stop them from looking forward to the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting. Moreover, everyone wanted to personally see the glory of the six super first-rate forces. It should be known that the people who came to the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting would definitely be personally led by the sect leaders of the six super first-rate forces. Such important figures were not usually seen. There were still more than 10 days before the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting began, but the surroundings of the Great Purity Temple were already bustling with noise and excitement. At the same time, on the mountain behind the Great Purity Temple, two white-haired elders in Taoist robes were sitting opposite each other. One of them spoke with a faint smile on his face. The original five-sect Grand Meeting has now become the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting. It looks like it will be interesting this time. The Sword Sect already has the strength of a super first-rate force. It is understandable for them to participate in the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting. Yes, but the young sect leader of the Sword Sect is quite capable. Even the Temple Master is full of praise for him. This time, it is a good opportunity to see how capable the young sect leader is with his own eyes. The Sword Sect was undoubtedly the focus of the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting. After all, the Sword Sect had just been promoted to a super first-rate force. Naturally, everyone was the most curious about it, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1999. The Sixth Sect Grand Meeting attracted many people's attention. After all, although the six super first-rate forces were not as dominating the Great Thousand World as the Tenling Tian sects, they were still a force to be reckoned with. Moreover, who could guarantee that the six super first-rate forces would not succeed in attacking the Ling Tian sects? Therefore, the major forces in the Great Thousand World paid special attention to the six super first-rate forces' every move, let alone the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting. Time passed by quietly. Following the opening of the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting, more and more martial artists flocked to the Taoist state. The Tai Ching Temple was already on standby. Unrelated people were not allowed to go near the Tai Ching Temple. Otherwise, they would be killed on the spot. In order to ensure that the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting could be held smoothly, the Tai Ching Temple was fully prepared. As everyone waited, the six super first-rate forces also arrived at the Tai Ching Temple one after another. The first to arrive was the Dragon Tiger sect. As the sect closest to the Tai Ching Temple among the six super first-rate forces, it was not strange for the Dragon Tiger sect to be the first to arrive. After the Dragon Tiger sect arrived, Grave Valley, Grand Wind City, and the Black Emperor sect also arrived in the next few days. Currently, only the people from the Sword Sect had not arrived. However, there were still a few days before the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting, so everyone was not in a hurry. After 2 days, Xiaochun and the rest finally arrived at the Tai Ching Temple. After entering the Tao Estate, Xiaochun realized that the Tao Estate was filled with spies from all the major sections. Not only were there spies from the first-rate forces, but the Tenling Tian sects had also sent spies. It could be said that the Tao Estate was currently filled with undercurrents as people from all the major forces had gathered there. With so many spies gathered in one state, Xiaochun and the rest naturally noticed that they were being closely monitored along the way. Every move they made was watched by countless pairs of eyes. Although Xiaochun was unhappy about this, there was nothing he could do. After all, they were one of the six super first-rate forces. Moreover, the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting was currently being held, so it was normal for the Sword Sect to be watched. Only when they arrived at the Grand Pure Temple did the spies stop following them. After all, the experts of the Grand Pure Temple had already cleaned up the surroundings of the temple, ensuring that no spies from any other organization could approach. The spies were naturally unable to continue following Xiao Chen's group when they arrived at the Great Purity Temple. After revealing their identities, Xiao Chen's group followed the experts of the Great Purity Temple to the main hall. Xiao Chen met the head of the Great Purity Temple, Taoist priest by song. When a sage-like old man saw Xiao Chen, Taoist master by song took the initiative to smile and say, "Sect Master Xiao Chen, your presence brings light to my humble abode." He did not underestimate Xiao Chen because of his age and cultivation. After all, the sword sect's strength was obvious. Even though Xiao Chen's cultivation was only at the great perfection of the comprehension realm, the sword sect was not weaker than any of the other super forces. Xiao Chen smiled when he heard Taoist Master by Song's words. Sect Master by Song is too polite. Xiao Chen was attending the Sixth Sect Grand Meeting as the Sect Master of the Sword Sect. Therefore, even though his cultivation and seniority could not be compared to Taoist Master by Song's, Xiao Chen still placed himself on the same level as Taoist Master by Song. He represented the Sword Sect. If Xiao Chen still called himself a junior in front of Taoist Master by Song, it would be a slap to his own face. Thinking about it, as the Sect Master, if Xiao Chen called himself a junior in front of Taoist Master by Song, wouldn't that mean that the Sword Sect was inferior to the Grand Pure Temple? Therefore, Xiao Chen directly called Taoist Master by Song by his full name. Taoist Master by Song was not displeased at all. Instead, he smiled and invited Xiao Chen into the main hall. In the main hall, the sect masters of the Black Emperor sect, Gravedigger Valley, Vast Peak City, and Longhu sect were already waiting. Seeing Xiao Chen and Taoist Master by Song appear, He Sui took the initiative to greet Xiao Chen. However, the remaining three people were extremely cold. Gravedigger Valley's Valley Master Gue Qi and Vast Peak City's City Lord Zhang Ting were very cold. As for Longhu sect's sect Master Ba Ling, he spoke, but his tone was full of mockery. Looking at Xiao Chen, Ba Ling sneered. "You've just been promoted to a super force, and you're already so powerful." The Sword Sect was the last of the 6 super forces to arrive. Ba Ling was obviously unhappy about this. In addition, the Longhu sect had an unusual relationship with the Katian sect, so it was not strange that Ba Ling targeted Xiao Chen the moment he arrived. Hearing Ba Ling's words, Xiao Chen looked at him indifferently and did not say anything. He went to his seat and sat down. As for Zhou Song and Wu Huan, they stood behind Xiao Chen and guarded him closely. With Xiao Chen's arrival, the sect masters of the 6 super forces were finally gathered. Because it was not the day of the 6th sect conference yet, they did not talk about anything substantial and just chatted with each other. As the host, Taoist by Song was naturally a smooth talker. He kept trying to start a conversation. However, Ba Ling kept picking on Xiao Chen while they were chatting. In the end, Ba Ling even sneered and said, "I wonder if the Sword Sect is qualified to be called one of the 6 super forces with us." Ba Ling was obviously joking. After all, they all agreed when the Sword Sect was promoted to a super force. Therefore, there was no need to doubt whether the Sword Sect was a super force or not. Ba Ling only said that to mock Xiao Chen and the Sword Sect. However, Xiao Chen replied indifferently after hearing Ba Ling's words. "Why don't you let the Longhu sect try and see if it's true?" Xiao Chen did not back down in the face of Ba Ling's mockery. Moreover, his words made the atmosphere tense up instantly. What did Xiao Chen mean by that? It could be taken as a declaration of war. According to Xiao Chen, since the Longhu sect doubted the strength of the Sword Sect, why don't they test it out themselves? As for how they were going to test it out, it was needless to say. Ba Ling's expression sank instantly after hearing Xiao Chen's words. He glared at Xiao Chen in anger. What arrogance! Xiao Chen, are you declaring war on my Longhu sect? If you think so, then so be it, Xiao Chen replied indifferently. You ignorant brat. Do you think that my Longhu sect doesn't dare to touch your sword sect? Ba Ling was completely enraged when he heard that. He stood up abruptly and roared at Xiao Chen with blazing eyes. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 2000. Ba Ling said fiercely. At the same time, a murderous aura emanated from his body. Zhou Song and Wu Huan immediately prepared themselves when they sensed the murderous aura emanating from Ba Ling's body. If Ba Ling dared to attack, the two of them would definitely attack without hesitation. With Zhou Song and Wu Huan around, Xiao Chen naturally did not have to worry about his safety. Although Ba Ling was strong, he did not have the ability to threaten him in front of Wu Huan and Zhou Song. Xiao Chen's expression did not change much. From the moment he walked into the main hall, Ba Ling had been targeting him and the sword sect. Therefore, although Ba Ling was furious at this time, Xiao Chen did not care at all. He did not have a good impression of Ba Ling in the first place, so it did not matter if he offended him. Moreover, the sword sect was indeed not afraid of the Longhu sect. Xiao Chen's expression was still calm and indifferent as he looked at Ba Ling and said indifferently, "You don't have to threaten me. If you want to fight, my sword sect will accompany you at any time." Xiao Chen did not give Ba Ling any face at all. This was the sword sect's first time participating in the sixth sect competition. Xiao Chen knew very well that as the leader of the sword sect, he could not show the slightest weakness. Otherwise, the other sects would definitely look down on the sword sect. This was something that Xiao Chen did not want to see. Although the Longhu sect was strong, the sword sect was not weak if a fight really broke out. Moreover, Ba Ling probably could not just start a war like this. After all, the sword sect and the Longhu sect strength were comparable. If the two sects really fought, the final result would be a lose-lose situation. Neither the sword sect nor the Longhu sect could afford such an outcome. Ba Ling glared fiercely at Xiao Chen. The anger in his heart could be described as erupting like a volcano. However, just as Xiao Chen thought, a war between powerful sects like the Longhu sect and the sword sect was not a small matter. Even Ba Ling had to be extremely cautious. The slightest carelessness could cause the Longhu sect to collapse. Xiao Chen's expression was calm in the face of Ba Ling's angry glare. He was not at all intimidated by Ba Ling's aura. He Sui, Daoist by Song, and the others who were seated all had their own thoughts when they saw the two men's hostility. However, after a moment of silence, Daoist by Ling took the initiative to persuade them. Sect leader Xiao Chen, sect leader Ba Ling, this is just a small matter. Why do you have to be like this? The sixth sect competition is about to begin. I think everyone should take a good rest. Daoist by Song took the initiative to persuade them. As the host, Daoist by Song naturally could not allow the Longhu sect and the sword sect to have any conflict here. Otherwise, the sixth sect grand meeting would not be able to continue. The purpose of the sixth sect grand meeting was not for the six super first-rate forces to fight fiercely. On the contrary, one of the purposes of the sixth sect grand meeting was to pull the six super first-rate forces closer to each other. After all, after becoming a super first-rate force, regardless of whether it was the sword sect, the Longhu sect, the Black Emperor sect, or the Tai Ching Temple, their goal was to become one of the 10 great Lingtian sects. As such, they naturally did not want to waste their strength on each other. Ba Ling snorted coldly when he heard Daoist by Song's words. However, he immediately sat down again. It was obvious that Ba Ling had given up on fighting. As Ba Ling gave up, the atmosphere in the hall eased up a little. Unfortunately, after what had happened earlier, everyone no longer had any interest in talking. Soon, they left the hall again. Like the others, Xiao Chen and the rest were also arranged to stay in the Tai Ching Temple. In order to entertain Xiao Chen and the rest, the Tai Ching Temple had even specially prepared a cave for Xiao Chen and the rest to stay in. The treatment was the same as the other sections. It could be seen that the Tai Ching Temple did not look down on the sword sect at all. After personally settling Xiao Chen and the rest in the cave, Daoist by Song left. Xiao Chen, Zhou Song, and Wu Huan sat in the garden and looked at Xiao Chen. Zhou Song said nonchalantly, "Junior brother, Ba Ling's hostility towards us is very strong. Do you think that the Katian sect is behind this?" Before they came, Lin Xing had already warned Xiao Chen to be careful of the Katian sect and the Dragon Tiger sect. However, from the moment they met today, Ba Ling had shown deep hostility towards them. Upon hearing Zhou Song's words, Xiao Chen smiled slightly. It's not just a guess, but a certainty. If it weren't for the Katian sect, Why would Ba Ling target us like this? The relationship between the Dragon Tiger sect and the Katian sect was not a secret in the Great Thousand World. They knew that the Katian sect had always supported the Dragon Tiger sect, and the Dragon Tiger sect did indeed have a close personal relationship with the Katian sect. Therefore, the hostility shown by Ba Ling today was definitely related to the Katian sect. However, even with the Katian sect behind them, Xiao Chun was not afraid. Firstly, it was because the Katian sect did not have the time to deal with the Sword sect. Secondly, even if the Katian sect took action, the Sword sect also had an ally among the 10 Great Lingtian sects, and that was the Moon Palace. The Moon Palace obviously would not watch the Katian sect take action. Although they might not choose to fight to the death with the Katian sect, the Moon Palace could definitely hold back most of the Katian sect's forces. Since the Katian sect could not deal with the Sword sect directly, Xiao Chun had nothing to be afraid of. The Katian sect was worried that the rise of the Sword sect would pose a threat to them, and Xiao Chun's thoughts were indeed the same. If the Sword sect really had the strength to challenge the 10 Great Lingtian sects one day, then there was no doubt that Xiao Chun's first target would be the Katian sect. Whether it was from the perspective of new enmity or old enmity, it was impossible for the Katian sect and the Sword sect to coexist peacefully. They could not do anything to the Katian sect in the short term, but one day, the Sword sect would definitely have the strength to contend with the Katian sect. He did not dwell too much on the Katian sect. After all, there was still a gap in strength between the Sword sect and the Katian sect, so it was useless to think about it. After staying in the Tai Ching temple for a few days, the 6th sect competition finally began early in the morning. There were not many people participating in the competition, only Xiao Chun and the other sect masters of the 6 Great Lingtian sects. In the main hall of the Tai Ching temple, the 6 of them sat in a circle in the middle of the hall. At this moment, the entire hall was shrouded in a formation. At the same time, there were many Tai Ching temple experts guarding the surroundings. It could be said that not even a fly could fly in. The contents of the 6th sect competition had to be kept strictly confidential. In the main hall, the contents of the conversation between Xiao Chun and the other sect masters of the 6 Great Lingtian sects could not be leaked out. Just like the previous time, Ba Ling's face was still extremely ugly when he saw Xiao Chun, but he did not make a move again. As the sect master of the Dragon Tiger sect, Ba Ling naturally knew the severity of the situation. It was obviously a little ignorant to make a move at this moment. Moreover, other people like He Sui and Daoist Bai Song would not agree to it. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2001. Even though Ba Ling was still angry, he did not get into a conflict with Xiao Chun at this time. After all, this was during the 6th sect conference and not during normal times. Even though Ba Ling was still angry, he did not get into a conflict with Xiao Chun at this time. After all, this was during the 6th sect conference and not during normal times. Xiao Chun and the other 5 took their seats. Then, as the host, Bai Song, smiled and said, "Everyone, since everyone is here, let's begin." There were a total of 2 stages to the 6th sect conference. The first stage was now, where the sect masters of the 6 super first-rate forces sat together to have a secret discussion. As for the second stage, it was relatively more casual. It was a banquet, and many sect masters of the first-rate forces were invited to attend. Of course, the purpose of this was naturally to better show the powerful strength of the 6 super first-rate forces. What was really important was the content that Xiao Chun and the other 5 people were discussing. This was the real core of the 6th sect conference. As for the content of this discussion, it was different every time. After all, the situation in the Great Thousand World was not constant. However, there was one thing that had never been missing, and that was the exchange of resources. There was no doubt that there were many resources in the Great Thousand World. However, at the level of Bai Song, He Sui, and the others, 99% of the cultivation resources were not of much use to them. At their level, only the real, peerless treasures were useful to their cultivation. Naturally, there were not many of such peerless treasures in the Great Thousand World. Therefore, Even though the 6 people present were the sect masters of the super first-rate forces, they did not dare to say that they would be able to obtain these peerless treasures. Moreover, there were many times when the treasures that were useful to one happened to be obtained by others. This was not uncommon. Therefore, when the 6th sect conference was held, the exchange of cultivation resources had almost become a management. The 6 super first-rate forces would take out some resources to exchange with each other. Some cultivation resources that were useless to them, but useful to others, or cultivation resources that they fancied in the hands of others could be exchanged. Of course, the premise was that both parties had to agree. A day passed in the main hall. The 6 people discussed a lot of things on this day. However, Xiao Chun didn't think that most of them had any substantial effect. For example, Xiao Chun would never believe that they would agree to advance and retreat together and form an alliance. What a joke. Xiao Chun would never do such a stupid thing as putting his life in the hands of others and pinning his hopes on others. Therefore, during the conversation, Xiao Chun didn't speak much. It wasn't until everyone was almost done talking that Xiao Chun became spirited. Knowing that the other 5 sects had many good items, Xiao Chun naturally didn't want to miss out on them. As the exchange segment began, He Sui was the first to speak as he looked at Xiao Chun. Sect leader Xiao Chun, my Black Emperor sect, is willing to exchange for your sword sect's celestial honorable stone. As long as Xiao Chun names a price, we can discuss any conditions. Celestial honorable stone, that was the treasure that Yi Sui had always wanted. The reason why the Black Emperor sect wanted to wipe out the sword sect was because of this stone. This was because it was said that this celestial honorable stone could allow one to break through to the end realm. Of course, no one could prove whether this was true or not, as it was all hearsay. Moreover, there were very few celestial honorable stones. Based on what was known in the history of the Great Thousand World, there were only 3 celestial honorable stones. No one could prove whether or not 3 celestial honorable stones could help one break through to the end realm. However, since there were such rumors, it meant that even if the celestial honorable stone couldn't help one break through to the end realm, it could at least increase one's chances. Yi Sui had been stuck at the end realm for many years and wasn't able to break through. Now, as long as there was a chance, he wouldn't let it go. This was the first time the Sword Sect was participating in the 6th sect gathering. Yi Sui wanted to make the first move and immediately said that he was willing to exchange for the celestial honorable stone. When they heard Yi Sui's words, Bai Song, Ba Ling, and the other 3 all said that they were willing to exchange for the celestial honorable stone with the Sword Sect. The temptation of the celestial honorable stone to Yi Sui and the others was self-evident. However, facing the 5 of them, Xiao Chun said, "The celestial honorable stone is the treasure of my sword sect and was obtained by Sword Venerable Patian. My sword sect won't exchange for it." Xiao Chun indeed had no intention of exchanging for the celestial honorable stone. What a joke, this was a true treasure. Although Xiao Chun didn't know whether or not the celestial honorable stone was useful, it didn't stop Xiao Chun from placing importance on it. He would keep it and use it when he broke through. Naturally, he wouldn't exchange for it. Both Taoists Bai Song and Yi Sui were disappointed to see Xiao Chun reject their offer. However, they had already guessed that it would be strange if Xiao Chun was willing to trade a treasure like the Heavenly Master Stone. They had expected this, so when they heard Xiao Chun reject it, although they were disappointed, they weren't surprised. On the other hand, when Ba Ling saw Xiao Chun reject it, he said coldly, "Ignorant kid, isn't it the saying that a man's wealth is his own ruin?" Ba Ling's words were obviously a threat to Xiao Chun. After all, the celestial honorable stone of the sword sect was coveted by all 5 forces. Perhaps the 5 forces would join forces to besiege the sword sect for the celestial honorable stone. When that happened, the sword sect wouldn't be able to withstand it. However, when he heard Ba Ling's words, Xiao Chun smiled nonchalantly. "Come on then. I'd like to see who will join forces with you for the celestial honorable stone. Furthermore, there's only one celestial honorable stone. How are you going to split it?" Xiao Chen wasn't worried about the 5 great sects joining forces. First of all, it was simply impossible. The 5 great sects were all on guard against each other and were suspicious of each other. Under such circumstances, it would be very difficult for them to truly join forces. Secondly, as Xiao Chun had said, there was only one celestial honorable stone. If the 5 great sects joined forces, how were they going to split it? He believed that everyone present understood this point. Moreover, even if the 5 great sects joined forces in the end, Xiao Chun could just throw the celestial honorable stone out and let the 5 great sects fight for it. At that time, the sword sect would be able to take advantage of the situation. Therefore, with so many concerns, the possibility of the 5 great sects joining forces was almost zero. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Ba Ling snorted coldly and didn't refute. In fact, he had just said those words to disgust Xiao Chun. In his heart, he had never thought of joining forces to besiege the sword sect and snatch the celestial honorable stone, because Ba Ling himself knew that it was unrealistic. Ba Ling chose to remain silent. He Sui, Taoist master by song, and the other 3 also dismissed the idea in their hearts. Snatching the celestial honorable stone was unrealistic. Please add it to your collection. Please recommend it. Content_1. Content_2. Content_3. Content_4. Content_5. Content_6. Content_7. Content_8. Content_9. Content_10. Content_11. Content_12. Content_13. Chapter 2002. Xiao Chan would definitely not exchange the heavenly honorable stone, and it was unrealistic to snatch it from him. Hence, he Sui, Bai Song, and the other 4 gave up on the idea of exchanging the heavenly honorable stone. Xiao Chan would definitely not exchange the heavenly honorable stone, and it was unrealistic to snatch it from him. Hence, he Sui, Bai Song, and the other 4 gave up on the idea of exchanging the heavenly honorable stone. The heavenly honorable stone was out of the question, but there were other items that could pique everyone's interest. Although they were not as good as the heavenly honorable stone, they were still useful for their cultivation. After rejecting the 5 of them, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "The sword sect has no intention of exchanging the heavenly honorable stone, but the 7-colored lotus is possible." The 7-colored lotus. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, he Sui and the other 4 were stunned. Then, they turned to look at Xiao Chun. Although the 7-colored lotus could not be compared to the heavenly honorable stone, it was still one of the top treasures in the great thousand world. Hence, everyone was excited that Xiao Chun was willing to exchange the 7-colored lotus. He Sui, Bai Song, and the other 3 immediately made their offers. Only Ba Ling did not make a move. He was probably still angry about what had happened earlier. Knowing the value of the 7-colored lotus, he Sui, Bai Song, and the other 3 offered a high price. Moreover, since Xiao Chun was willing to exchange the 7-colored lotus, he obviously knew the value of the 7-colored lotus. Hence, there was no deception at all. The 4 of them were very interested in the 7-colored lotus, but in the end, Taoist Bai Song was more willing to part with it. Xiao Chen also agreed to exchange the 7-colored lotus with Taoist Bai Song after hearing about his conditions. The cultivation resources that Xiao Chan exchanged were basically targeted at the comprehension state and Dao realm martial artists. This level of cultivation resource naturally could not be compared to the 7-colored lotus, but it happened to be what Xiao Chan needed the most at the moment. Not only Xiao Chun, but Qin Shu, Long Qing, Xin Yuan Ling, and the others also happened to need this level of cultivation resource. Moreover, a single seven-colored lotus could be exchanged for a considerable amount of resources. In Xiao Qian's opinion, it was indeed worth it. What he needed was the real treasure. This was what Xiao Qian had always believed in. Although the seven-colored lotus was precious, he didn't need it now. It was just a decoration in the sword sect's treasury. It was better to exchange it. Of course, there was more than one seven-colored lotus in the sword sect. Therefore, Xiao Qian wouldn't feel distressed to exchange it for something useful to him. The seven-colored lotus was obtained by Bai Song. After the exchange, both of them accepted each other's treasures with satisfaction. There were no special rules. This exchange of resources was originally an exchange of resources that were useful to one another. Therefore, after Bai Song and Xiao Qian finished their exchange, He Sui, Ba Ling, and the others also took out their treasures to exchange for other treasures that they wanted or were useful to them. The sect masters of the 6 super first-rate forces seemed to be holding a small exchange meeting as they exchanged their treasures with each other. As the exchange went on, Xiao Qian's gains greatly exceeded his expectations. At the same time, he couldn't help but sigh. These 6 super first-rate forces had a strong foundation. He originally thought that the sword sect's foundation should be much stronger than the other 5 forces. However, what surprised Xiao Qian was that compared to the sword sect, the Taiqing Temple, the Black Emperor sect, and the Longhu sect weren't much weaker. It was precisely because the 5 forces had strong backgrounds that Xiao Qian needed a lot of treasures that the sword sect didn't have. During this exchange, Xiao Qian obtained a lot of treasures that Xiao Qian needed. Moreover, because the treasures that Xiao Qian needed didn't conflict with those of Bai Song, He Sui, and the others, the 5 of them liked to exchange with Xiao Qian very much. After all, exchanging treasures that were useless to them for treasures that were useful to them was the most perfect outcome. Who would refuse such an offer? Xiao Qian's gains were bountiful. Similarly, the treasures that Xiao Qian took out satisfied Bai Song and the others. Later on, Ba Ling also exchanged 1 or 2 treasures with Xiao Qian. Xiao Qian didn't refuse. Although Xiao Qian and Ba Ling didn't see eye to eye with each other, they naturally wouldn't refuse treasures that were useful to them, and the other party happened to be willing to exchange them. As for the enmity between them, they could obviously put it aside and exchange for treasures that were useful to them first. The exchange of cultivation resources was obviously the favorite part of the 6 people present. It was also the most exciting part. While Xiao Qian and the others were exchanging cultivation resources, on the other side, in the cave abode that the people of the sword sect were temporarily staying in, Long Qing and Xin Yuanling could only wait there because they weren't qualified to accompany Xiao Qian into the main hall. Sitting opposite each other and looking at Xin Yuanling, Long Qing said worriedly, "It's been almost 2 days. Will little brother be okay?" "I don't think so. Moreover, it's only been 2 days. The 5-sect gathering would take at least 3 days to end," Xin Yuanling said calmly. Xiao Qian's cultivation was far inferior to Bai Song and the others, but during the 6th-sect gathering, Bai Song and the others wouldn't attack Xiao Qian. There was no need to worry about Xiao Qian's safety. Moreover, Zhou Song and Wu Huan were still guarding outside the main hall. If anything happened, the 2 of them would definitely save Xiao Qian immediately. Moreover, Xiao Qian still had a space compass on him. If there was any danger, Xiao Qian would have a way to escape. One had to know that once the space compass was used, even an end-realm expert wouldn't be able to interrupt it. One could say that in terms of his own safety, Xiao Qian was fully prepared. This wasn't to say that Xiao Qian was a coward. It was because with Xiao Qian's current status, the people he came into contact with were all end-realm experts. Like Bai Song, He Sui, Ba Ling, any one of them could shake the world with a stomp of their feet. To come into contact with such experts, Xiao Qian's cultivation was only at the comprehension realm. If he wasn't prepared, he really had no choice. After all, if an end-realm expert wanted to attack Xiao Qian, they wouldn't need to spend much effort. Since his cultivation couldn't be on the same level as those experts, then naturally he could only borrow external strength to protect himself. Since he didn't need to worry about Xiao Qian's safety, Long Qing relaxed. The 2 of them chatted for a while and felt a little bored. Then, They left the cave and strolled around Tai Ching Temple. He didn't know that Long Qing and Xin Yuanling were worried about him. At this moment, Xiao Chun had already earned a lot. He had been searching for many cultivation resources that the sword sect didn't have. In this exchange, Xiao Chun obtained many of them. One could say that according to Xiao Chen's estimation, the gains this time would allow him to last until the Dao Realm completion. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2003. Xiao Chun and the other sect masters of the 6 super first-rate forces had a secret discussion in the Tai Ching Temple's main hall for 3 days. After 3 days, the 6 of them finally concluded their secret discussion. Xiao Chun and the other sect masters of the 6 super first-rate forces had a secret discussion in the Tai Ching Temple's main hall for 3 days. After 3 days, the 6 of them finally concluded their secret discussion. Although many people were curious about the contents of the secret conversation between the 6 of them, no one dared to ask. Of course, as the person involved, Xiao Chun did not lose out at all by participating in the 6 sects conference this time. At least, he got a lot of cultivation resources that he needed. After the secret discussion, the second part of the 6 sect Great Assembly began. At the same time, the sect masters and sect masters of the various first-rate forces arrived at the Tai Ching Temple one after another. These first-rate forces had also received invitations to the 6th sect Great Assembly. Of course, they weren't qualified to participate in the first part of the assembly. They could only wait until Xiao Chun and the other sect masters of the 6 super first-rate forces finished their discussion before they could rush to the Tai Ching Temple. Many sect masters of the first-rate forces had also received invitations. Xiao Chun didn't care much about these first-rate forces, as the experts of the Tai Ching Temple would naturally return to deal with them. After the meeting ended, Xiao Chun directly returned to his cave residence and waited for the banquet to begin. In the cave residence, Xiao Chun, Long Qing, Xin Yuanling, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, and Nangong Guan were gathered together. Nangong Guan had also received an invitation to the 6th sect Great Assembly. As the sect master of family Nangong, Nangong Guan naturally had to represent family Nangong to participate in the assembly. As Xiao Chen's senior brother, Nangong Guan and the other experts of family Nangong didn't need to be invited by the Tai Ching Temple. They directly stayed together with Xiao Chun and the others. Since they had to wait for the various first-rate forces sect masters to arrive, the banquet would only begin after a few more days. However, Xiao Chun wasn't in a hurry about it. It was said that the 6th sect Great Assembly this time had 30 to 40 first-rate forces participating. The scale could be said to be the grandest one in history. After waiting for 3 days, the banquet was finally held as scheduled. The Great Pure One Temple was located on the beautiful mountain peak. This was the place where the banquet was held. There were not many people attending the banquet. Including the sect leaders, and their companions, there were only a few hundred people. There were 6 elegant pavilions. These were the seats of the 6 super first-rate forces. As for the leaders of the first-rate forces, they only had a short table and a futon. Everyone gathered together. The purpose of this banquet was to show the strength of the 6 super first-rate forces and to rope in the first-rate forces present. It should be noted that more than half of the first-rate forces that attended the banquet were affiliated sects of the 6 super first-rate forces. For example, the Black Emperor sect had a total of 3 first-rate powers under its command. As for the others like the Longhu sect, Sky Temple, and Vast Summit City, they also had first-rate powers under their command. Only the Sword sect did not seem to have any first-rate powers under its command. However, Xiao Chun did not care about this. He did not value these first-rate forces too much. To put it bluntly, although it sounded good to have a first-rate force under their command, in fact, in Xiao Chen's opinion, it was only a superficial thing. In reality, it did not have much of an effect. If one was strong enough, it was not important to have a first-rate force under their command. Moreover, if the Sword sect was able to regain its position as one of the 10 great Lingtian sects one day, would there be a need to be afraid that there would not be any first-rate forces under their command? Due to this reason, Xiao Chun was not very enthusiastic about roping in these first-rate forces. He was only slightly closer to Nangongguan and the people from family Nangong. The banquet continued, and everyone chatted with each other. However, during the banquet, Ba Ling suddenly looked at Xiao Chun and said, "Sect leader Xiao Chun, are you interested in sparring with the people from our sects?" Ba Ling suddenly asked. Upon hearing this, everyone present looked at Xiao Chun. Although Ba Ling said sparring, his motive was very simple. He just wanted to embarrass the sword sect. Upon hearing Ba Ling's words, Xiao Chun's expression did not change much. He glanced at him and said nonchalantly, "Since sect leader Ba Ling is interested, let's do it." Ba Ling was deliberately targeting the sword sect. Since that was the case, Xiao Chun naturally would not back down. Moreover, sparring during the sixth sect competition was a very normal thing to do. Upon hearing Xiao Chun's words, Ba Ling sneered and glanced at a young man beside him. This young man was a genius disciple of the Longhu sect. He was Ba Ling's disciple. This time, he came with Ba Ling. He was a genius in the comprehension realm. Ba Ling immediately sent out his disciple. In response, before Xiao Chun could say anything, Long Qing spoke first. "Let me do it. I haven't fought in a long time. I'm a little bored." Xiao Chun originally planned to fight Ba Ling's disciple himself, but Long Qing beat him to it. In fact, Long Qing took the initiative to fight for Xiao Chun. After all, Xiao Chun was the headmaster of Swords Gate. Although everyone present knew that Xiao Chun's cultivation base could not be compared with Ba Ling and the others due to his age, Xiao Chun was still the headmaster of Swords Gate. However, as the sect leader, if Xiao Chun personally fought Ba Ling's disciple, regardless of whether he won or lost, it would at least be embarrassing. After all, Xiao Chun was the sect leader of the Sword sect, while Ba Ling's disciple was only a disciple of the Longhu sect. There was a huge gap between their statuses. Upon hearing Long Qing's words, Xiao Chun naturally knew what she was thinking. Therefore, he did not refuse. Besides, Xiao Chun was very confident in Long Qing's strength. Upon hearing that Long Qing was going to fight, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Nangongguan, and several powerhouses of the Sword sect were curious. They knew that Long Qing and Xiao Chun were sworn siblings. However, after so many years, Long Qing and Long Qing had never fought. Therefore, they were curious about Long Qing's strength. After saying that, Lin Qing slowly walked out of the pavilion of the Sword sect and came to the center of the mountain peak. At the same time, Ba Ling's disciple also stepped forward and stood in front of Long Qing. The young man's name was Zhou Mu. It could be said that he was the strongest among Ba Ling's disciples. He was also the eldest disciple of the Longhu sect. The two of them stood facing each other. Looking at Long Qing, Zhou Mu sneered. "I originally wanted to fight the sect leader of the Sword sect. You're not worthy of me fighting," Long Qing said coldly. She did not give Zhou Mu any face. Upon hearing Long Qing's words, a cold light flashed in Zhou Mu's eyes. Then, he said coldly, "I hope your strength is as powerful as your mouth." After saying that, a terrifying aura exploded from Zhou Mu's body. Seeing this, Long Qing was not to be outdone. She also released her own aura. "Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 2004. Zhou Mu was at the initial stage of the Enlightenment realm, while Long Qing was at the initial stage of the Enlightenment realm. Judging from their cultivation alone, Zhou Mu should be stronger. However, at this moment, as both of them unleashed their auras, Long Qing wasn't much weaker than Zhou Mu. Feeling Long Qing's domineering aura, Zhou Mu's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Dragon race? Interesting. So what? As he spoke, Zhou Mu took the lead and punched towards Long Qing. Facing Zhou Mu's attack, Long Qing didn't have any intention of dodging. He also punched out and collided head-on with Zhou Mu's. Longhu sect placed a lot of emphasis on the cultivation of the physical body. Hence, from Ba Ling to the ordinary disciples of Longhu's sect, their physical bodies were extremely strong. However, as a pure-blooded dragon, Long Qing's physical strength wasn't weak either. The two men's fists collided, and a terrifying force spread out in all directions. However, no one in the audience cared about this at all. After all, apart from the younger disciples, the rest of the people who were able to attend this banquet were basically end-realm almighties. The weakest was a Tao realm expert. Experts like them naturally weren't afraid of the shockwaves from the battle between Longqing and Zhou Mu. They sat calmly on the spot and watched the intense battle between Longqing and Zhou Mu. Under everyone's gaze, Longqing and Zhou Mu were also engaged in a fierce battle. Both of them had strong physical bodies, and the fight was extremely intense and hot-blooded. Moreover, their fighting styles were very similar, simple, and violent. With their terrifying physical strength, as their fists continuously punched out, ripples appeared in the space. At the start, Zhou Mu looked down on Longqing. However, as the battle continued, Zhou Mu gradually stopped looking down on him. Although Longqing's cultivation was a small realm lower than his strength wasn't any weaker than Zhou Mu's. Especially in terms of physical strength, Longqing wasn't afraid of Zhou Mu at all. This made Zhou Mu start to take Longqing seriously. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged hundreds of blows. At this time, flames began to burn on Zhou Mu's body. Not long after, Zhou Mu's entire body seemed to be wrapped in flames. Seeing Zhou Mu's transformation, many of the people present murmured softly, "Flowing Flame Battle Body." The Flowing Flame Battle Body was the most famous body tempering technique in the Longhu sect. It was also the strongest body tempering technique. Who would have thought that Zhou Mu had already learned the Flowing Flame Battle Body? With the Flowing Fire Battle Body, Zhou Mu's physical strength was probably close to that of a Tao realm expert. Moreover, the most terrifying thing about the Flowing Fire Battle Body was that it became stronger the more he fought. As the battle continued, Zhou Mu's physical strength grew stronger and stronger until he reached his peak state after using the Flowing Fire Battle Body. Now, Zhou Mu was able to fight Longqing to a standstill. Moreover, after using the Flowing Flame Battle Body, as time passed and the battle continued, Zhou Mu's Flowing Flame Battle Body would become stronger and stronger. At that time, if Longqing didn't have any trump cards, the one who would lose would probably be Longqing. The fierce battle continued. After Zhou Mu used the Flowing Fire Battle Body, he became more and more courageous. Gradually, Longqing was being suppressed. Feeling that he had the upper hand, Zhou Mu's battle intent intensified. He looked at Longqing and sneered. "Your strength is not bad. You are worthy of me. How about it? Be my woman and I won't treat you badly." The moment he opened his mouth, he wanted Longqing to be his woman. Hearing this, Longqing's eyes flashed with a cold light. Zhou Mu had indeed taken a liking to Longqing. Firstly, Longqing's appearance wasn't bad. She could even be said to be devastatingly beautiful. Moreover, Longqing was also very strong, especially in terms of physical strength. As the first disciple of the Longhu sect, Zhou Mu naturally didn't lack women. However, Longqing could be said to be the first woman that had truly moved his heart. In Zhou Mu's opinion, only a woman like Longqing was worthy of him. It was a pity that Zhou Mu was interested in Longqing. However, after hearing this, Longqing replied coldly, "Let's talk about it after you defeat me." Longqing clearly wasn't interested in Zhou Mu. Hearing this, Zhou Mu smiled and said, "That's not difficult at all." As he spoke, Zhou Mu's attacks became more ferocious. Longqing also became more and more difficult to deal with. Seeing that Longqing was about to be completely suppressed by Zhou Mu, the crowd thought that the battle was about to end. However, at this moment, a green light suddenly shot out from Longqing's body. Following the appearance of the green light, a dragon tribe aura that was even purer and denser than before spread out. Longqing was originally a pure-blooded dragon clan member, so her dragon clan aura could be said to be incomparably pure. However, the dragon clan aura that Longqing released was at least several times thicker than before. Even a pure-blooded dragon clan member wouldn't possess such a dense dragon clan aura. Sensing the dragon clan aura that spread out from Longqing's body, many people's faces changed drastically, including Zhou Song, Wu Huan, and the others. Even Wu Huan couldn't help but blurt out, "Ancestral dragon." Long Qing is the ancestral dragon. Only the ancestral dragon could possess such a pure dragon clan aura. What kind of existence was the ancestral dragon? It was an existence that surpassed the end realm. Currently, the Dragon Clan was one of the 10 great Lingtian sects, and the ancestral dragon was an existence that was on the same level as Jun Wuya and Dan Qingyan. The ancestral dragon was undoubtedly the king of the Dragon Clan. Currently, there was only one ancestral dragon in the Great Thousand World. No one had expected to see one here. As Long Qing released her ancestral dragon aura, everyone present was stunned. Even though they were all end realm experts and had seen a lot, they were still shocked to see an ancestral dragon all of a sudden. It couldn't be helped. Ancestral dragons were just too rare. Moreover, every ancestral dragon that was born was an existence that defied the heavens. This little lass is actually an ancestral dragon. Many people exclaimed in astonishment. Ignoring everyone's shock, Long Qing, who was gradually being suppressed, instantly turned the situation around after revealing her ancestral dragon aura. Although the flowing fire battle body was strong, it was still a far cry from the ancestral dragon bloodline. Therefore, after Long Qing used her ancestral dragon bloodline, Zhou Mu was completely suppressed by Long Qing without any surprise. After using her ancestral dragon bloodline, Long Qing's physical strength was no weaker than a Dao Realm expert. Her physical strength was indeed much stronger than Zhou Mu's. For a moment, Zhou Mu was almost being defeated by Long Qing, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2005. No one expected Long Qing to have the ancestral dragon bloodline. Under everyone's gaze, Long Qing completely suppressed Zhou Mu. Not long after, Zhou Mu was sent flying with a punch from Long Qing. The outcome of the battle was clear. Zhou Mu didn't lose out to Long Qing. She had the ancestral dragon bloodline. Even though Zhou Mu had the flowing fire battle body, he was obviously no match for her. Ba Ling's expression was ugly after Zhou Mu was defeated. After all, it was in front of so many people. Originally, Ba Ling wanted to embarrass Xiao Chun, but he didn't expect Zhou Mu to be defeated in the end. If it were just a defeat, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, Long Qing's cultivation was lower than Zhou Mu's by a small realm. In this way, Long Qing had defeated Zhou Mu. As the eldest disciple of the Longhu sect, Zhou Mu was defeated by someone who was of a higher realm. What would the experts present think? Was their Longhu sect not strong enough? His expression was extremely gloomy. Compared to Ba Ling's gloominess, Xiao Chun on the other side had a faint smile on his face. Xiao Chun wasn't surprised that Long Qing defeated Zhou Mu. Xiao Chun naturally knew his second sister's strength. Especially after obtaining the ancestral dragon bloodline, Long Qing's combat strength had increased by a lot. After the battle ended, Long Qing didn't say much. She directly walked back to the pavilion where the sword sect was. When she came in front of Xiao Chun, Long Qing smiled mischievously. "How was it? I didn't embarrass our sword sect, right?" Hearing Long Qing's words, Xiao Chun smiled and nodded. After the battle ended, everyone present looked in the direction of the sword sect. Their eyes revealed a strange expression. In the current sword sect, not only did they have 6 end realm experts, but they also had many talents in the younger generation. Needless to say, Xiao Chun possessed the sword body and was the successor of the heaven-breaking sword sovereign. As Jun Wuya's disciple, his combat strength was definitely at the top among his peers. As for Long Qing, the combat strength he displayed today was not weak at all. The experts of the older generation weren't any weaker than the other super first-rate forces, and the younger generation had an aura that surpassed their predecessors. As a result, it would be difficult for the sword sect to not rise. Everyone's opinion of the sword sect had changed. In the following banquet, Ba Ling didn't dare to provoke the sword sect. Firstly, Ba Ling knew that the sword sect wasn't something he could bully at will. The banquet continued, and as time passed, the atmosphere gradually became livelier. Actually, Xiao Chun wasn't too interested in such a banquet. However, this was the sixth sect great meeting after all, and Xiao Chun couldn't just leave. The banquet lasted for an entire day, and only when the banquet ended did everyone leave. They didn't stay in the Tai Ching temple for long. After the sixth sect great meeting ended, Xiao Chun and his group left the Tai Ching temple the next day. Daoist by Song personally sent them off. Daoist by Song and the Tai Ching temple had shown enough discussion about the sword sect and Xiao Chun. From Daoist by Song's actions, it wasn't hard to see that the Tai Ching temple was willing to be on good terms with the sword sect. Anyone could see that the sword sect had huge potential. Moreover, the Tai Ching temple and the sword sect were very far apart, so there wouldn't be any conflicts of interest. As such, being on good terms with the sword sect was obviously beneficial to the Tai Ching temple. With Daoist by Song personally sending them off, Xiao Chun and his group left the Tai Ching temple and prepared to return to the sword sect. However, just as Xiao Chun and his group were preparing to return to the sword sect, a group of higher-ups from the heavenly sect gathered in the main hall of the Tianzhou region. There were a total of 8 End Realm experts, but the sect leader wasn't there. However, with 8 End Realm experts gathered together, it was obvious that the heavenly sect was going to make a big move. At this moment, one of them spoke first. The sixth sect great meeting has ended. How are the preparations? Everything is ready, but this time, Zhou Song and Wu Huan have been following beside Xiao Chun. Hearing this, another person spoke. All along, the heavenly sect hadn't acted against the sword sect. Everyone thought that the heavenly sect didn't have the time to do anything, but who would have thought that the heavenly sect actually wanted to kill Xiao Chun? It wasn't a secret that Xiao Chun was going to participate in the sixth sect great meeting, and the heavenly sect's plan was very simple. They would send people to kill Xiao Chun while he was on the way back to the sword sect. Killing Xiao Chun on the way back was obviously much easier than killing Xiao Chun in the sword sect. Moreover, this time, Xiao Chun only had Zhou Song and Wu Huan, 2 End Realm experts protecting him. Hearing this, the person who spoke before nodded slightly and then said coldly, "Then let's do it. This time, we have to directly kill Xiao Chun." The heavenly sect and the sword sect already had enmity, and now that the sword sect was rising up, it was something that the heavenly sect didn't want to see. Therefore, even if the sect leader of the heavenly sect was in seclusion, the other deputy sect leaders felt that they couldn't give the sword sect a chance to grow. They had to kill the threat of the sword sect in the cradle. Only then would the higher-ups of the heavenly sect be prepared to kill Xiao Chun. No one had any objections to the plan to kill Xiao Chun. Moreover, in order to succeed, the heavenly sect sent out a total of 5 End Realm experts to ensure that they would succeed in one strike and not give Xiao Chun any chance. The plan was more or less done. That day, 5 End Realm experts of the heavenly sect secretly set off from Tianzhou and rushed towards the planned location. As one of the 10 great Ling Tian sects, the heavenly sect actually dared to do such a thing. From this, one could see their fear and killing intent towards the sword sect. They definitely couldn't allow the sword sect to grow. Otherwise, it would definitely be a threat to the heavenly sect. With the enmity between the heavenly sect and the sword sect, if the sword sect wanted to become one of the 10 great Ling Tian sects, their first target would definitely be the heavenly sect. The experts of the heavenly sect were already on their way. However, Xiao Chun didn't know anything about this. Under the protection of Zhou Song and Wu Huan, Xiao Chun rushed towards the sword sect. During this sixth sect great meeting, Xiao Chun obtained many good things. With these treasures, Xiao Chun probably wouldn't need to worry about cultivation resources for a long period of time. After leaving Tai Ching Temple, Xiao Chun's group quickly left Taozhou. At this moment, Xiao Chun's group arrived at a city called 100 Martial City. After several days of continuous travel, Xiao Chun's group planned to rest for a night in 100 Martial City. However, what Xiao Chun didn't know was that there were already hundreds of heavenly sect experts gathered in 100 Martial City. Moreover, the 5 End Realm experts of the heavenly sect had already rushed to 100 Martial City. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2006. Within the 100 Martial City, many experts from the heavenly sect were already prepared. The reason why they set the ambush location at 100 Martial City was because if Xiao Chun wanted to return to the Sword Sect, 100 Martial City was a place he had to pass through. Within the 100 Martial City, many experts from the heavenly sect were already prepared. The reason why they set the ambush location at 100 Martial City was because if Xiao Chun wanted to return to the Sword Sect, 100 Martial City was a place he had to pass through. Within 100 Martial City, fighting was naturally not allowed. However, such a rule was obviously nothing to the heavenly sect. Moreover, the 100 Martial City Lord Manor, whether it was in front of the heavenly sect or the Sword Sect, could be said to be a weak existence. Their strength was far from being comparable to the heavenly sect and the Sword Sect. Therefore, the battle between the two sects was simply like a battle between immortals and mortals. At night, in the inn where Xiao Chun and the others were staying, many black figures were quickly approaching. However, just as these black figures approached the inn, Zhou Song and Wu Huan, who were originally sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed, opened their eyes at the same time. The senses of an end realm expert were extremely sharp. Therefore, it was almost impossible to sneak attack an end realm expert. As a result, before the people from the heavenly sect could do anything, Zhou Song and Wu Huan had already sensed it. They immediately went to Xiao Chen's room and gathered together. Zhou Song was the first to speak. "Junior brother, it seems like tonight won't be peaceful." Hundreds of people had already surrounded the inn where they were staying. Hearing Zhou Song's words, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with coldness. Who is it? Longhu sect? He still didn't know the identity of these people, but the biggest suspect should be the Longhu sect. After all, in this sixth sect meeting, Xiao Chun and Ba Ling didn't get along. At first, Xiao Chun wondered if Ba Ling was going to attack him. However, he quickly dispelled this idea. Although Ba Ling was not on good terms with him, he did not have the guts to kill him at this time. Ba Ling should be well aware of the consequences of trying to kill him. Clearly, he wouldn't do such a stupid thing, because once Ba Ling did so, the Sword Sect and the Longhu sect would fight to the death. At that time, the Longhu sect would definitely suffer. If it was not Ba Ling, who could it be? Suddenly, Xiao Chun thought of the Coiling Heaven sect. Only the 10 great Ling Tian sects would have the guts to kill the Sword Sect. Among the 10 great Ling Tian sects, the one that hated and feared the Sword Sect the most was undoubtedly the Coiling Heaven sect. The Coiling Heaven sect definitely didn't want to see the rise of the Sword Sect. There was no doubt about this. Just as Xiao Chun was guessing in his heart, the hundreds of black-robed men appeared one after another. Obviously, they also knew that sneak attacks were simply too laughable in front of an end realm expert. Thus, after confirming that they had completely sealed off Xiao Chun and the others' escape route, the hundreds of experts from the heavenly sect also appeared. At the same time, the 5 end realm experts from the heavenly sect also appeared in the courtyard. The door opened and Xiao Chun saw the 5 end realm experts standing in the courtyard. Xiao Chun even recognized one of them. It was Pixie whom he saw in the Dan Valley. Since Pixie appeared here, everything was clear. Looking at Pixie and the other 4 Coiling Heaven sect deputy sect heads, a cold intent flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes. However, he still walked out of the room with Zhou Song and Wu Huan. He looked at Pixie and the others and laughed coldly. Coiling Heaven sect, as expected, you only know how to do some sneaky things. Why are you planning to kill me? While speaking, Xiao Chun also observed the situation in front of him. Their way out was completely sealed, and they were surrounded by the Coiling Heaven sect experts. There was basically no chance of escaping. His side only had Zhou Song and Wu Huan, 2 end realm experts. As for the Coiling Heaven sect, apart from the hundreds of experts, they sent out 5 end realm experts. The strength of both sides were not on the same level. Zhou Song and Wu Huan might be able to block Pixie and the others for a while, but as time passed, the two of them obviously weren't their match. His heart sank a little. But on the surface, Xiao Chun didn't show it. Looking at Xiao Chun, Paisiel laughed coldly and said with a hoarse voice, "Xiao Chun, you will definitely die today." He had made sufficient preparations. Today, he would definitely kill Xiao Chun here. The killing intent in his eyes couldn't be hidden at all. When he heard Paisiel's words, Xiao Chun's heart sank. He could escape. After all, Xiao Chun had a space compass on him. With the space compass, even end-realm experts like Paisiel wouldn't be able to stop him. However, there was only one space compass. Xiao Chun could leave, but what about Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Long Qing, and Xin Yuanling? What about them? He didn't doubt that once he left, they would all die. The heavenly sect definitely wouldn't leave them alive. They couldn't leave them behind. This was something that Xiao Chun couldn't do. As if he had seen through Xiao Chun's thoughts, Zhou Song transmitted a message to Xiao Chun. "Junior brother, leave by yourself. Don't hesitate." They were completely surrounded by the heavenly sect. With the current situation, it was obviously impossible for them to escape together. Only Xiao Chun could use the space compass to leave by himself. Only then would they have a chance to escape. Hence, Zhou Song didn't hesitate to let Xiao Chun leave by himself. Hearing this, Xiao Chun remained silent. No matter how they thought about it, they would never have thought that the Katian sect would actually do such a thing. As one of the 10 great Lingtian sects, the Katian sect's actions were indeed somewhat degrading. However, no matter what, the Katian sect's move had indeed forced Xiao Chun and the others into a desperate situation. It was obvious that the heavenly sect was prepared. Moreover, their goal was very clear, which was to kill Xiao Chun. From the heavenly sect's point of view, as long as they killed Xiao Chun, the sword sect would be leaderless. By then, there would naturally be no threat. Although the heavenly sect's move was despicable, it was also the smartest way to obtain the greatest benefit with the smallest price. Since they had fallen into such a forbidden area, they could only blame Xiao Chun for underestimating the heavenly sect. In other words, Xiao Chun thought that a top 10 Lingtian sect, like the heavenly sect, wouldn't do such a thing. After all, as one of the top 10 Lingtian sects, they should have their own pride. He still underestimated the heavenly sect. Hence, Xiao Chun had to pay a heavy price for this. Paisiel didn't give Xiao Chun and the others much time to think. As soon as he finished speaking, he shouted, "Kill." Without wasting any time, the group of heavenly sect's experts immediately charged towards Xiao Chun and the others. Seeing this, Zhou Song and the others immediately attacked. Wu Huan even said to Xiao Chun, "Junior brother, let's go." Faced with a meticulously set-up killing trap by the heavenly sect, Zhou Song and Wu Huan couldn't delay for too long. Hence, both of them urged Xiao Chun to leave quickly. If he stayed, he would just be giving up his life for nothing. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2007. The heavenly sect's encirclement came too suddenly, and Xiao Chun and the others were completely unprepared. Now that they were heavily surrounded, Zhou Song and Wu Huan wanted Xiao Chun to leave first. Only Xiao Chun had a spatial compass, and only Xiao Chun could use it to leave. However, when he heard Zhou Song and Wu Huan's words, Xiao Chun didn't hesitate in the slightest and gave up on the idea of leaving by himself. Xiao Chun wasn't someone who was afraid of death, and it was even more impossible for him to abandon everyone at a time like this. Not to mention Zhou Song and Wu Huan. Long Qing and Xin Yuanling were also here, so how could Xiao Chun leave by himself? When he used the sword realm, Xiao Chun immediately joined the battle. Seeing that Xiao Chun didn't choose to escape, Zhou Song and Wu Huan were stunned, and then they helplessly shouted, "Junior brother, hurry up and leave." "I'm not leaving. If we live together. If we die together," Xiao Chun said with a serious expression. Xiao Chun naturally couldn't abandon everyone and leave by himself. After saying that, Xiao Chun began a fight with an elder from the heavenly sect. The elder had a cultivation level of the Dao realm. However, Xiao Chun was no longer afraid of Dao realm cultivators. He used the sword realm, which shrouded the elder and made him fall into a disadvantageous position for a while. Sword body, as expected of the successor chosen by the heaven-breaking sword sovereign. However, Shao Chun, you will definitely die today, Puxie said coldly when he felt the sharp aura from the sword realm. The sword realm was indeed powerful. Although Shao Chun's cultivation was only at the great circle of the comprehension realm, it was enough for him to fight against a Dao realm expert. With the Wuchen's sword in hand, Shao Chun and the heavenly sect elder fought intensely. Although Shao Chun suppressed the elder, unfortunately, there were just too many people from the heavenly sect. The moment the battle ended, Shao Chun and the others fell into a disadvantage, especially Zhou Song and Wu Huan. The two of them had to block 5 end-realm experts, so one could imagine the pressure they felt. Although the two of them were still entangled with Puxie and the others, as time passed, Zhou Song and Wu Huan became more and more powerless. They wanted to break out of the encirclement, but the heavenly sect was prepared and didn't give Shao Chun and the others a chance at all. Under the intense battle, the people from the sword sect were all injured, especially Shao Chun. After all, the goal of the heavenly sect was to kill Shao Chun, which was why almost all of the heavenly sect experts were targeting Shao Chun. Even though Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Long Qing, Xinyuan Ling, and the others were trying their best to reduce the pressure on Shao Chun, unfortunately, there were still more than 10 heavenly sect experts surrounding Shao Chun. Shao Chun was the first target, so naturally, he was under the most pressure. It was also because Zhou Song and Wu Huan risked their lives to block Puxie and the others. Otherwise, Shao Chun would have already been killed. It was easy to imagine the pressure Shao Chun was under when he had to fight against more than a dozen cultivators from the Katian sect, and the weakest among them was in the realm of enlightenment. There were already many injuries on his body. If it wasn't for the power of the sword world, Shao Chun probably wouldn't have been able to hold on until now. However, as the injuries on his body became more and more obvious, Shao Chun also felt a sense of helplessness. Sensing that Shao Chun was getting weaker, one of the heavenly sect elders surrounding Shao Chun laughed coldly. Shao Chun, stop fighting like a cornered beast. You don't have any chance today. They sent out so many people and prepared for so long just to kill Shao Chun. How could the heavenly sect let Shao Chun have a chance to escape tonight? The intense battle continued in the inn, but no one in the entire 100 Martial City dared to get close. In front of the heavenly sect, the rules of 100 Martial City weren't even worth mentioning. If the heavenly sect wanted to kill Shao Chun in 100 Martial City, who would dare to say no? No one dared to stop them, and Shao Chun found it harder and harder to deal with the dozens of heavenly sect experts in front of him. Not only Shao Chun, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Long Qing, Xinyuan Ling, and the others also found it hard to block the attacks of the heavenly sect. Seeing that everyone was in danger, Puxie and the other heavenly sect experts heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like there wouldn't be any big problems today. Shao Chun had to die. Without Shao Chun, the leaderless sword sect would naturally fall apart. At that time, the heavenly sect wouldn't have to worry about the threat of the sword sect. In a short few decades, the sudden rise of the sword sect was naturally related to Shao Chun. As long as they killed Shao Chun, the sword sect naturally wouldn't have any chance of rising again. The heavenly sect was clear that as long as they killed Shao Chun, they would be able to completely eliminate the threat of the sword sect. Seeing that it was getting harder and harder to hold on, Zhou Song couldn't help but shout at Shao Chun. Junior brother, let's go. Don't give up your life for nothing. Looking at the current situation, if they stayed, they would definitely die. If Shao Chun escaped, the sword sect would still have a chance to survive. However, after hearing Zhou Song's words, Shao Chun shook his head. Second senior brother, it's useless. Even if I leave today, will the heavenly sect let the sword sect go? Shao Chun still didn't have any intentions of leaving. The reason was simple. The heavenly sect definitely wouldn't let him go. They also wouldn't let the sword sect go. Even if Shao Chun escaped today, they would lose Zhou Song and Wu Huan. In the future, the heavenly sect would still attack the sword sect. What would they do then? At the start, Shao Chun thought that the heavenly sect wouldn't attack the sword sect so quickly. However, it seemed like his thoughts were too simple. Maybe Shao Chun underestimated the heavenly sect's determination to destroy the sword sect. Even if they couldn't go all out against the sword sect, as long as the heavenly sect took out a portion of their strength, it would be hard for the sword sect to resist. The heavenly sect might not be able to go all out against the sword sect for now, but that didn't mean that they didn't have the ability to destroy the sword sect. Even if they couldn't put all their efforts into the sword sect, as one of the top 10 Ling Tian sects, even if the heavenly sect only took out half of their strength, they would be able to go against the sword sect. This was how terrifying the top 10 Ling Tian sects were. The heavenly sect wasn't willing to let the sword sect rise and wanted to kill the sword sect's threat in the cradle. After hearing Shao Chen's words, Zhou Song and Wu Huan were both stunned. Then, they fell into silence. Shao Chen was right. Even if they escaped today, the heavenly sect would definitely attack the sword sect in the future. What would they do then? To put it bluntly, the sword sect was still too weak. If the sword sect was stronger, they wouldn't have to fear the heavenly sect. However, after a moment of silence, Zhou Song and Wu Huan both said at the same time, "No matter what, junior brother, you should leave first. When Master comes back, he won't sit by and do nothing. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 2008. Zhou Song and Wu Huan knew that what Shao Chen said was true. Even if Shao Chun used the space compass to escape, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Long Qing, Xin Yuan Ling, and the other sword sect experts would definitely die here. Zhou Song and Wu Huan knew that what Shao Chen said was true. Even if Shao Chun used the space compass to escape, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Long Qing, Xin Yuan Ling, and the other sword sect experts would definitely die here. If they lost Zhou Song and Wu Huan, these two End Realm experts, the Hetian sect would definitely attack the sword sect. At that time, the result would still be the same. To put it bluntly, the sword sect wasn't strong enough to go against the Hetian sect. However, no matter what, Zhou Song and Wu Huan both hoped that Shao Chun could leave first. After all, only by surviving would there be hope. Moreover, one couldn't forget that Shao Chun was Jun Wuya's last disciple. Facing such a desperate situation, Jun Wuya definitely wouldn't sit still and do nothing. Hearing Zhou Song and Wu Huan's words, Pisiel laughed coldly. Emperor? Haha, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, haven't you heard of the saying, distant water can't put out a nearby fire? Jun Wuya hadn't appeared in the world for many years, and no one knew where he was. As such, Pisiel didn't think that Jun Wuya could resolve the sword sect's crisis. The Hetian sect knew that Shao Chun was Jun Wuya's disciple, but so what? When Jun Wuya rushed back, everything would probably be over. At that time, if Jun Wuya wanted to take revenge for Shao Chun, the Hetian sect wouldn't be afraid. After all, they weren't pushovers. From Pisiel's words, it seemed like he didn't care about Jun Wuya at all. However, just as he finished speaking, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared. Then, in the courtyard that was already in a mess, an illusory figure appeared. He had white hair and a youthful face, and he wore a gray sackcloth. Along with the appearance of this illusory figure, whether it was the experts of the Hetian sect or Shao Chun and the others, they were all stunned. The person who came wasn't anyone else, it was Jun Wuya. When Jun Wuya appeared, he looked indifferently at Pisiel and said, "Kid, you're quite arrogant. You, Emperor." Upon seeing Jun Wuya, Pisiel and the other experts of the Hetian sect were stunned. Then, they unconsciously stopped what they were doing. Although Pisiel's words sounded like he didn't care about Jun Wuya at all, that was when Jun Wuya wasn't around. Now that Jun Wuya had appeared, even if Pisiel had 100 guts, he would never dare to say such words again. Emperor, the number one expert of the Great Thousand Worlds, wasn't something that could be casually said. Not to mention Pisiel, even the Hetian sect leader, who was at the same level as Jun Wuya, wouldn't dare to speak carelessly in front of Jun Wuya. Indeed, when Jun Wuya became famous, Pisiel was still a kid. They didn't expect Jun Wuya to suddenly appear. Passia and the others were stunned. On the other hand, when Zhou Song, Wu Huan, and Xiao Chun saw Jun Wuya, they couldn't help but reveal a look of excitement. This was especially true for Zhou Song and Wu Huan. The two of them hadn't seen Jun Wuya for many years. Now that they saw Jun Wuya again, although it was just an illusion, the two of them were still very excited. They immediately bowed respectfully to Jun Wuya and said, "Disciple greets master." Facing their greetings, Jun Wuya nodded slightly. However, his gaze turned to Xiao Chun and a gentle smile flashed across his eyes. "Disciple, you still underestimated your enemy. That's why you're in such a predicament." Jun Wuya's words clearly contained a trace of blame. In Jun Wuya's opinion, the reason why Xiao Chun was in such a predicament was because he had underestimated the Hetian sect. He always felt that the Hetian sect wouldn't act against the sword sect so quickly. Therefore, Xiao Chun didn't make enough preparations for this sixth disabled sect assembly. Hearing Jun Wuya's words, Xiao Chun didn't refute. He nodded slightly and said, "Master is right. What Jun Wuya said was the truth." Xiao Chun couldn't refute it. This time, he had indeed underestimated his enemy. Hearing the conversation between Jun Wuya and Xiao Chun, Passia and the others frowned slightly. However, soon, one of them said coldly, "Jun Wuya is just an illusion. Sovereign Emperor is just a phantom. Don't worry about him. Kill." Jun Wuya's appearance was indeed unexpected to the experts of the Hetian sect. However, this alone wasn't enough to make them retreat. It wasn't his true body that had come. It was just an avatar. Hearing this person's words, the killing intent in the eyes of Passia and the others gathered again. Jun Wuya's true body wasn't here. Since that was the case, they must kill Xiao Chun today. Hearing the words of the expert from the Hetian sect, Jun Wuya smiled faintly and said, "Even if this old man is only an avatar, it's enough to protect my disciple." They thought that since Jun Wuya was only an avatar, they didn't need to be too afraid. However, Passia and the others obviously didn't know that Jun Wuya's strength had already exceeded their understanding. Jun Wuya had never appeared in the vast thousand worlds after traveling for so many years, so it was impossible that his strength had not improved at all. On the contrary, Jun Wuya's strength had improved a lot during these years of traveling. As such, even if it was only a doppelganger of his spiritual soul that had descended, Jun Wuya still had the ability to protect Xiao Chun and the others. As soon as his voice fell, without waiting for Passia and the others to reply, Jun Wuya formed a seal with his hands. At the same time, a space crack slowly tore open in the courtyard. This space crack was different from an ordinary space crack. It was a void passage. Jun Wuya used his own strength to open up the space crack. Seeing Jun Wuya's actions, Passia and the others were stunned. Then they all spoke in disbelief. The perfect realm of the law of space. Jun Wuya had comprehended the law of space, and he had even comprehended it to the great perfection realm. Passia and the others were stunned when they saw the scene before them. At the same time, Jun Wuya said to Xiao Chun faintly, "Go." This space crack led directly to the sword sect. As long as they returned to the sword sect, Xiao Chun would have a way to deal with the Hetian sect. Upon hearing Jun Wuya's words, Xiao Chun was stunned. Then, he looked at Jun Wuya and said, "Master, when will you be back?" Xiao Chun wanted Jun Wuya to return to the sword sect as soon as possible, because as long as Jun Wuya joined, the sword sect would have the possibility of becoming one of the 10 great Lingtian sects. Moreover, if Jun Wuya joined, the pressure on Xiao Chun would naturally be reduced by a lot. Xiao Chun was not the only one who hoped that Jun Wuya would return as soon as possible. Upon hearing this, Zhou Song and Wu Huan also looked at Jun Wuya expectantly. Unfortunately, under the gazes of the three people, Jun Wuya scolded jokingly. "What? You can't take it anymore and want this old man to come back and clean up the mess for you?" When Xiao Chun requested to return to the great wide world, Jun Wuya teased him. Upon hearing this, Xiao Chun curled his lips helplessly. Indeed, he couldn't take it anymore. Seeing that Xiao Chun didn't answer, Junwia also smiled and said, "In 100 years, I will return to the great wide world." All right, enough nonsense. Let's go. Chapter 2009. Xiao Chun wanted Junwia to return as soon as possible. After all, if Junwia was in the Sword Sect, then the Sword Sect would no longer fear the Hetian Sect. Unfortunately, Junwia didn't give a clear answer to Xiao Chen's thoughts. However, the good thing was that Junwia didn't refuse. Hearing Xiao Chun and Junwia's words, Zhou Song and Wu Huan were both excited. After all, Junwia didn't refuse, which proved that Junwia might really choose to join the Sword Sect. It was just that the timing wasn't certain. Zhou Song and Wu Huan naturally understood their master very well. Since he didn't refuse, it meant that Junwi Yuan didn't have much resistance to joining the Sword Sect. How could Zhou Song and Wu Huan not be excited to be able to join the same sect as their master? After all, this had always been their wish. While they were excited, they were also shocked. From Jun Wuya's words and actions, it wasn't difficult to see how much importance Jun Wuya attached to Xiao Chun. Compared to the 4 in-name disciples, Xiao Chun's importance in Jun Wuya's heart couldn't be compared. From a moment he appeared until now, Jun Wuya had only nodded to the two of them. After that, he had been talking to Xiao Chun. They didn't doubt Xiao Chun's identity, but after seeing Jun Wuya, Zhou Song and Wu Huan realized how much importance their master attached to Xiao Chun, as expected of his last disciple. While the two of them were still in shock, Jun Wuya turned to look at them and said calmly, "Zhou Song, Wu Huan, the two of you must protect Junior Brother well." "Yes, master," Jun Wuya instructed the two of them. Hearing this, Zhou Song and Wu Huan respectfully saluted. It should have been a situation of certain death, but with the appearance of Jun Wuya, the crisis seemed to have been resolved just like that. After saying that, Jun Wuya motioned for everyone to quickly enter his spatial tunnel. Seeing that Xiao Chun and the others were about to leave, Pixie and the other Heavenly Sect experts naturally wouldn't agree. In order to kill them this time, the Heavenly Sect had made all the preparations. They didn't even hesitate to send 5 End Realm experts. 5 End Realm experts tried to kill Xiao Chun, but who knew that at the last moment, Xiao Chun would actually flee. This was something that the people of Jointian's sect couldn't accept. Thus, seeing that Xiao Chun and the others were about to leave, Pixie immediately shouted, "Stop them! Jun Wuya is just a soul clone. Don't be afraid." Jun Wuya was just a soul clone, so Pixie didn't care too much. If Jun Wuya's main body came, then Pixie and the others would have fled long ago. After all, there was a limit to the power of a soul clone. Moreover, this was the best chance to kill Xiao Chun, so Pixie and the others decided to go all out. Hearing Pixie's words, the heaven-joining sect experts all charged towards Xiao Chun and the others. Seeing this, Jun Wuya scoffed coldly. "You don't know your place." As he said that, Jun Wuya waved his hand, and a golden light seemed to tear through the night sky, covering everyone. Anyone that was hit by the golden light was instantly pierced with numerous bloody holes. The golden light was like many sharp thorns, directly piercing through everyone's bodies. Jun Wuya's soul clone did descend, but with Jun Wuya's strength, it wasn't impossible for him to protect Xiao Chun and the others and leave. As Jun Wuya attacked, the heaven-joining sect experts fell one by one. Only Pixie and the others were able to block Jun Wuya's attack. However, even if the 5 of them had the ability to block the golden light, they were still shocked by this scene. One must know that the one in front of them was just a soul clone of Jun Wuya, and its combat strength was far from the main body. Even so, Jun Wuya heavily injured everyone from the heaven-joining sect in one move. Even Dao Realm experts didn't have much ability to fight back in front of Jun Wuya. This is the strength of the number 1 expert of the Great Thousand Worlds. An End Realm expert from the heaven-joining sect couldn't help but mutter softly. A mere soul clone had such strength. If Jun Wuya's main body descended, then none of the heaven-joining sect experts present would be able to leave, including Pixie and the other End Realm experts. They were already doubting whether the sect leader of the heaven-joining sect, who was said to be on the same level as Jun Wuya, was really a match for Jun Wuya. He hadn't appeared in the Great Thousand Worlds for so many years. So what realm had Jun Wuya's strength reached? They were shocked, but taking advantage of Jun Wuya's attack, Xiao Chun and the others all entered the space that Jun Wuya opened and disappeared. After waiting for Xiao Chun and the others to enter the space tunnel, Jun Wuya also closed the entrance, and everything returned to normal. Apart from the courtyard and in that were completely destroyed due to the battle, there was nothing else. After safely sending off Xiao Chun and the others, Jun Wuya looked at Paxia and the others calmly. There was no anger in his eyes, no sadness or joy, as if he was looking at a group of ants. Facing Jun Wuya's gaze, Paxia and the others' hearts sank, afraid that Jun Wuya would attack again. Although they were only facing a soul clone of Jun Wuya, after what happened just now, Paxia and the others were already terrified of Jun Wuya, even if it was just a soul clone. Fortunately, Jun Wuya didn't continue to attack. His originally illusory figure slowly dissipated and disappeared into the air. It wasn't until Jun Wuya completely disappeared that Paxia and the others secretly breathed a sigh of relief. But soon, the five of them revealed a look of unwillingness. This time, they could have killed Xiao Chun in one fell swoop. But who would have thought that at the last moment, Jun Wuya would appear and save Xiao Chun and the others? They had prepared for so long and mobilized so many experts, but in the end, it ended in failure. If this was all, it wouldn't be a big deal, but after this incident, Paxia and the others were very clear that it would be very difficult to find such an opportunity again in the future. After all, after this incident, Xiao Chun would definitely pay more attention to his own safety in the future. As a result, it would be almost impossible to find an opportunity to kill Xiao Chun again. Damn it, Paxia cursed angrily. But even if he was unwilling, what could he do? Hearing this, Paxia took a deep breath and said helplessly, "Let's go. Man proposes, God disposes. This time, there is no chance. Let's go back first." As he spoke, Paxia glanced at the surrounding experts from the United Heaven sect. Many of them have been severely injured by Jun Wuya's one move. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 2010. Hundreds of heavenly sect experts were heavily injured in just one move. The comprehension realm and Tao realm experts were still okay, as none of them died. However, more than half of the celestial emperor realm experts were directly killed. Hundreds of heavenly sect experts were heavily injured in just one move. The comprehension realm and Tao realm experts were still okay, as none of them died. However, more than half of the celestial emperor realm experts were directly killed. A single divine soul avatar was able to kill so many people in a single move. This caused Paxia to be extremely shocked. It was hard to imagine how strong Jun Wuya was. Also, if Jun Wuya really joined the Sword Sect, could the Heavenly Sect compete with the Sword Sect? Not to mention other things, but who would stop Jun Wuya then? Would they rely on the Heavenly sect leader? Although the Heavenly sect leader was an existence that surpassed the End Realm, Paxia wasn't confident at all. He didn't know whether or not the Heavenly sect leader could stop Jun Wuya. If he couldn't, then the outcome would be catastrophic. Shock, fear, but very quickly, Paxia revealed a vicious expression. No, we have to quickly wipe out the Sword Sect. Jun definitely wasn't in the Great Thousand World. Otherwise, it wouldn't just be a soul clone. So, they had to take down the Sword Sect before Jun Wuya returned to the Sword Sect. Jun Wuya's strength covered Paxia's heart, but at the same time, it strengthened his determination to quickly wipe out the Sword Sect. He had to get rid of the Sword Sect before Jun Wuya returned to the Great Thousand World. He couldn't give the Sword Sect any more chances. Paxia thought to himself. Not only Paxia, but the other four End Realm experts also thought the same. They exchanged glances with one another, and then one of them said, "Let's go back first." The encirclement this time had failed at the last step, and they could only choose to retreat for the time being. Hearing this, the other four nodded slightly. The experts of the Katian sect left. On the other side, with Jun Wuya's help, Xiao Qin's group safely returned to the sword sect. However, Song Xing and the others were shocked when they saw that they were all injured. He told Song Xing and the others what had happened. When they heard that Xiao Chun and the others were besieged by the Coiling Heaven sect, everyone frowned. The sudden attack from the Coiling Heaven sect had indeed caused everyone to feel heavy-hearted. It could not be helped, as the sword sect was still no match for the Coiling Heaven sect, one of the 10 Great Ling Tian sects. If the Coiling Heaven sect really did not dare to attack the sword sect, then the sword sect would indeed have a hard time defending themselves. They originally thought that the Coiling Heaven sect would not attack the sword sect so quickly, but now it seemed like everyone was wrong. Or rather, everyone had underestimated the fear that the Coiling Heaven sect had towards the sword sect. It was because of this deep fear towards the sword sect that the Coiling Heaven sect wanted to destroy the sword sect as quickly as possible. As such, everything else could be temporarily put aside. In the main hall, Xiao Chan sat on the main seat and looked at the people below. After a moment of silence, he said, "This time, although Master has made a move and foiled the Coiling Heaven sect scheme, I believe that the Coiling Heaven sect will not let this matter rest." After this incident, Xiao Chun completely understood the problem. To the Coiling Heaven sect, destroying the sword sect was the most important thing right now. As such, although the encirclement of the Coiling Heaven sect this time ended in failure, it would not be long before they would definitely make a comeback. At that time, it would definitely not be so easy to defeat them. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Song Xing, and the others who were present nodded slightly. They did not doubt Xiao Chen's words because the Coiling Heaven sect's large-scale attack was already inevitable. Now, the sword sect was faced with how to deal with the Coiling Heaven sect's upcoming attack and how to block the numerous experts from the Coiling Heaven sect. In terms of strength, the sword sect was obviously not as strong as the Coiling Heaven sect. Therefore, it was almost impossible for them to block the Coiling Heaven sect. Their own strength was not enough to go against the Coiling Heaven sect. As such, they could only think of a way to seek external help. Their opponent was the Coiling Heaven sect. Obviously, ordinary forces did not dare to be enemies with them. If they wanted to seek external help, they could only look for the other forces that were also part of the 10 Great Ling Tian sects. This was because only they had the capital to not fear the Coiling Heaven sect. Xiao Chun already had a rough plan in his heart. However, it was only a thought. Xiao Chun still needed to think about the specifics. Looking at the solemn faces of Zhou Song and the others, Xiao Chun helplessly smiled bitterly and said, "All right, even if the Coiling Heaven sect wants to come, they can't come just because they want to. We still have time to prepare. Let's go and rest first." Song Xing was fine, but Xiao Chun, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Long Qing, and Xin Yuanling were all injured. Therefore, Xiao Chun also asked everyone to go and rest. After leaving the hall one after another, Xiao Chun returned to his dwelling. His injuries were nothing special. After ingesting healing pills, he only needed to rest for a few days, and he would be fine. What truly left Xiao Chun helpless was still the matter of the Coiling Heaven sect. Just as Xiao Chun was thinking about how to deal with the Coiling Heaven sect on the other side, in the Dragon Province that was extremely far away from the Sword Province. The Dragon Province was a province, but basically 80% of its area was covered by the ocean. As for the land, it was only a series of small islands. At the bottom of the sea in the Dragon Province, there was a majestic palace. This was where the Dragon Palace was located, as well as the headquarters of the Dragon Clan. The Dragon Palace was also one of the 10 Great Ling Tian sects of the Great Wide World, and it was a powerful, established organization. In terms of heritage, probably even the Sword Sect at its peak could not compare to it. At this moment, a middle-aged man sat on the main seat in the hall of the Dragon Palace. Below him was an old man. Looking at the old man, the middle-aged man said indifferently, "Are you sure? The ancestor has specially asked about this." The middle-aged man was the current palace master of the Dragon Palace, as well as the clan leader of the Dragon Clan. In response to his question, the old man below him replied respectfully, "It's been confirmed." There were many people present at the time, including Taoists by Song, He Sui Ba Ling, and so on. They can all confirm that it's the bloodline of the ancestral dragon. During the great assembly of the six sects, Longqing had displayed the bloodline of the ancestral dragon. So naturally, the news had reached the ears of the Dragon Palace. The ancestor of the Dragon Palace, the ancestral dragon, immediately ordered the current palace master of the Dragon Palace, the middle-aged man, to investigate the matter thoroughly after hearing the news. If it was true, he was to bring Longqing back. Hearing the old man's reply, the middle-aged man pondered for a moment before speaking. If that's the case, take some people to the sword sect and bring the little girl back. The ancestor wants to see her. It was actually not strange that the Dragon Palace wanted to bring Longqing back. After all, the bloodline of the ancestral dragon was very precious. Since it had appeared, the Dragon Palace obviously would not stand idly by. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, the old man nodded respectfully and replied, "Yes," begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2011. The Dragon Palace had started to notice Longqing and was prepared to send people to bring Longqing back. However, Xiao Chun and the others didn't know about this yet. Xiao Chun and the higher-ups of the Sword Sect were all focused on dealing with the Hittian Sect. They all knew that the Hittian Sect was bound to attack the Sword Sect. What the Sword Sect had to face was the threat from the Hittian Sect. After a few days of rest, Xiao Chun's injuries were more or less healed. On this day, in the main hall of the Sword Sect, Xiao Chun, Zhou Song, Wu Huan, Song Xing, and He Exine gathered together to discuss how to deal with the Hittian Sect. The Sword Sect's strength alone wasn't enough to deal with the Hittian Sect. Even if the sect leader of the Hittian Sect was in seclusion, the Sword Sect was still their opponent. This was because in terms of the number of End Realm experts on both sides, the Hittian Sect had more than the Sword Sect. Their strength wasn't on the same level. In this way, if the Sword Sect wanted to deal with the Hittian Sect's attack, they had to find a way to rope in external help. The best person that Xiao Chun could think of was the Moon Palace. As one of the top 10 Lingtian sects, the Moon Palace wasn't any weaker than the Hittian Sect. Therefore, with the help of the Moon Palace, the Sword Sect had the ability to fight with the Hittian Sect. Of course, Xiao Chun also knew that it was impossible for the Moon Palace to fight to the death with the Hittian Sect. Although the Moon Palace had the intention of building a good relationship with the Sword Sect in the Dan Valley, it was impossible for the Moon Palace to fight to the death with the Hittian Sect for the Sword Sect. Xiao Chun was very clear about this point. Therefore, Xiao Chun's goal was only to hope that the Moon Palace could help to restrain a portion of the Hittian Sect's strength. As long as the Moon Palace could restrain a portion of the Hittian Sect's strength, the Sword Sect would have the power to fight against the Hittian Sect's attack. The most important thing was to rely on oneself. The Lunar Palace could only lend a hand. Xiao Chun explained his idea to everyone present. After hearing what Xiao Chun said, Song Xing and the others had no objections. After all, this was the best solution at the moment. He hoped that the Moon Palace would lend a hand. Of course, with the relationship between the Sword Sect and the Moon Palace, and the fact that Xiao Xiao was the holy maiden of the Moon Palace, it was not impossible for the Moon Palace to act to restrain a portion of the Heavenly Sect's forces. No one objected. Now, they needed to send people to the Moon Palace. Looking at everyone, Xiao Chun asked, "Who is willing to go to the Moon Palace?" "I'll go." Zhou Song took the initiative to answer Xiao Chun's question. If one were to ask who was most familiar with the Moon Palace, it would undoubtedly be Zhou Song. Moreover, Zhou Song was Xiao Zhao's second senior brother. He was indeed the most suitable person to go to the Moon Palace. Hearing Zhou Song's words, Xiao Chun nodded and said, "In that case, I'll have to trouble second senior brother to make the trip." Whether or not they could obtain the help of the Moon Palace was too important for the Sword Sect. They could not afford to be careless. Therefore, Xiao Chun attached great importance to this matter. After settling the matter, Zhou Song set off for the Moon Palace on the same day. Zhou Song left. 3 days after Zhou Song left for the Moon Palace, the people from the Dragon Palace also arrived at the Sword Sect. Hearing that the people from the Dragon Palace had come to the Sword Sect, Xiao Chun was stunned at first. However, he quickly guessed their purpose. It should be because of Long Qing. After all, the Sword Sect and the Dragon Palace had no relationship. Now that the people from the Dragon Palace had taken the initiative to visit, the only possibility was that they were here for Long Qing. Perhaps during the Sixth Sect Conference, Long Qing had revealed the ancestral dragon bloodline and attracted the attention of the Dragon Palace. In the main hall, Xiao Chun met the elder of the Dragon Palace, named Long Shan. In the main hall, Long Shan looked at Xiao Chun, who was sitting on a main seat, and directly stated his purpose. Sect Master Xiao Chun, this old man is here for Long Qing. I wonder if you can let Long Qing show herself. Long Shan was obviously not interested in other matters. This time, he was ordered to come to the Sword Sect. His only purpose was to bring Long Qing back to the Dragon Palace. Moreover, this was an order from the ancestor. Long Shan did not dare to be careless. Hearing Long Shan's words, although Xiao Chun had some guesses in his heart, he still frowned and asked, "Why does the Dragon Palace want to see my second sister?" Although he had guessed beforehand that Long Shan must have come for Long Qing, Xiao Chun still asked when he heard that Long Shan really came for Long Qing. Long Qing was originally a pure-blood dragon, and now she had the ancestral dragon bloodline. Logically speaking, the Dragon Palace should not harm Long Qing. After all, the Dragon Clan attached great importance to the power of the bloodline. As a member of the Dragon Clan, the Dragon Palace should be of the same clan to Long Qing. Generally, the Dragon Clan would not kill each other. However, there were exceptions to everything. Therefore, Xiao Chun could not really relax before he knew the real intention of the Dragon Palace. In the face of Xiao Chen's questions and worries, Long Shan did not hide anything. He immediately told Xiao Chun that the ancestor of the Dragon Clan wanted to see Long Qing. Sect leader Xiao Chun, please rest assured. The Dragon Palace has no evil intentions towards Long Qing. It is just that the ancestor wants to see her. As for the reason, I think Xiao Chun can guess it. It is really because Long Qing has the ancestral dragon bloodline. Because Long Qing had the ancestral dragon bloodline, the ancestor of the Dragon Clan wanted to see her. Therefore, Long Shan came to the Sword Sect personally. Xiao Chun did not have any doubts about Long Shan's words. However, after a moment of silence, Xiao Chun cautiously said, "How about this? Second sister is now in seclusion. Elder Long Shan can rest in the Sword Sect for a night. Tomorrow, I will let second sister meet Elder Long Shan in person. What do you think?" Xiao Chun did not directly agree with Long Shan. This matter still needed to be discussed with Long Qing. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Long Shan hesitated for a moment, then nodded and agreed. Logically speaking, the strength of the Dragon Palace was stronger than the Heavenly Sect. They were not afraid of the Sword Sect at all. However, Long Shan's attitude toward Xiao Chun was very polite. He did not have any intention of oppressing others because of the strength of the Dragon Palace. Judging from Long Shan's attitude, Xiao Chun could feel that the Dragon Palace did not have any malicious intentions towards Long Qing. Moreover, what Xiao Chun did not know was that before coming, the Palace Master of the Dragon Palace had specially reminded Long Shan to be polite when he went to the Sword Sect to bring Long Qing back. This was because the ancestor seemed to have the intention of accepting Long Qing as a disciple. He could not offend Long Qing casually. The ancestor of the Dragon Clan wanted to accept Long Qing as a disciple. In this way, Long Qing's status in the Dragon Palace would naturally be different in the future. Therefore, Long Shan was very clear that even though the Dragon Palace was much stronger than the Sword Sect, he could not offend them. Xiao Chun hoped that Long Shan would wait for a day. Regarding this, Long Shan readily agreed. Then, he personally arranged a residence for Long Shan. Xiao Chun then returned to his cave residence, ready to discuss with Long Qing. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 2012. In the cave residence, Xiao Chun, Long Qing, and Xin Yuan Ling sat together and told them about the people from Dragon Palace. Then, Xiao Chun looked at Long Qing, obviously waiting for her reply. Although he did not feel any hostility from Long Qing, this matter ultimately depended on Long Qing. If Long Qing did not want to go to Dragon Palace, then Xiao Chun would definitely not agree. Even though Dragon Palace was stronger than Hetian sect, Xiao Chun would never betray his sister in exchange for He Ping. Facing Xiao Chen's gaze, Long Qing hesitated for a moment and then said, "I'll go." Dragon Palace took the initiative to send people to find her. Long Qing did not hesitate too much and decided to go back to Dragon Palace with Long Shan. The main reason why she agreed so quickly was that Long Qing still wanted to improve her strength. Unlike Xin Yuan Ling, Long Qing only received the ancestral dragon bloodline from Jun Wuya, but Xin Yuan Ling received a complete set of the Reincarnation Emperor's legacy. In this way, even if Xin Yuan Ling stayed in the sword sect to practice, there would be no problem. Because of the complete legacy of the Reincarnation Emperor, Xin Yuan Ling did not need anyone to teach him at all. In fact, no one could teach him. As long as he had enough practice resources, Xin Yuan Ling could practice according to the legacy of the Reincarnation Emperor. Long Qing was different. Jun Wuya only gave her the ancestral dragon bloodline. As for how to stimulate or enhance the power of the ancestral dragon bloodline in her body, Long Qing did not know at all. Not to mention Long Qing, even Jun Wuya did not know much about it. Therefore, compared to Xin Yuan Ling, if Long Qing practiced by herself, it was obviously much more difficult. Especially recently, Long Qing clearly felt that she had fallen into a bottleneck and her practice speed had gradually slowed down. If this continued, Long Qing was very clear that it would not be long before she was completely separated from Xin Yuan Ling and Xiao Chun. Therefore, in order to obtain more strength, Long Qing did not hesitate too much and made a decision. Hearing Long Qing's words, Xiao Chun and Xin Yuan Ling looked at each other and then nodded slightly. Xiao Chun and Xin Yuan Ling were not surprised by Long Qing's decision. It was because they guessed that Long Qing was likely to agree that Xiao Chun did not reject Long Qing on the spot. Now it seemed that their thoughts were the same. With a sigh, Xiao Chun turned to Long Qing and said, "Since second sister has already made a decision, I have no objections. However, second sister, you must be careful when you go to the Dragon Clan." Long Qing had made a decision, and Xiao Chun had no reason to refuse. Moreover, Xiao Chun and his siblings had been together for so many years. It was not the first time that they had parted like this. Besides their own safety, there was nothing else to say. Besides, Long Qing going to the Dragon Palace did not mean that they would not see each other in the future. On the contrary, if Long Qing was really accepted as a disciple by the ancestor of the Dragon Palace, it would be a good thing for the Sword Sect. Because at that time, with Long Qing's relationship, the Sword Sect and the Dragon Palace could obviously establish a connection. With the help of the Dragon Palace and the Moon Palace, the Sword Sect would no longer be afraid of the Hetian sect. In other words, the Hetian sect would have to think twice before making a move on the Sword Sect. Being able to rope in the Dragon Palace was obviously a piece of good news for the Swords Gate. The decision was quickly made. However, Xiao Chun and the other two got together and had a good drink. The next morning, Xiao Chun, Long Qing, and Xin Yuan Ling went to Long Shan's residence together. Seeing Long Qing, Long Shan's attitude was very respectful. It seemed that the Dragon Palace really attached great importance to Long Qing. Xiao Chun and Xin Yuan Ling were naturally satisfied. After all, the more importance the Dragon Palace attached to Long Qing, the safer Long Qing would be after going to the Dragon Palace. Of course, for Long Qing's safety, Xiao Chun also made a lot of preparations. Last night, Xiao Chun took out a lot of life-saving items from the treasure house of the Sword Sect and gave them to Long Qing to ensure that Long Qing could cope with some dangerous situations. Needless to say, the elixirs and talismans, Xiao Chun even gave Long Qing a space compass and asked her to keep it with her. If anything happened, she could use it directly and return to the Sword Sect. With the space compass, except for the ancestor of the Dragon Tribe, almost no one could threaten Long Qing's safety. Therefore, Xiao Chun and Xian Yuanling were a little relieved. At this time, everyone took their seats one after another. Long Shan's attention was naturally on Long Qing. He already knew the answer from Xiao Chun, but at this time, Long Shan still looked at Long Qing and asked, "Have you really decided to go to the Dragon Palace with me?" Long Shan still wanted to confirm the answer from Long Qing. Hearing this, Long Qing nodded and said yes. Long Qing had indeed made the decision to go to the Dragon Palace. Hearing this, Long Shan smiled slightly and then exchanged some pleasantries with Xiao Chun. Then, he was ready to take Long Qing to the Dragon Palace today. Xiao Chun and Xian Yuanling had no objection to this, and so did Long Qing. After a few simple words, Long Qing was led away by Long Shan. Before leaving, Xiao Chun reminded Long Qing again. "Second sister, be careful in the Dragon Palace. If there is anything, contact me. Big brother, and I will be there as soon as possible." The only thing Xiao Chun was worried about was Long Qing's safety. It was not difficult to see from Long Shan's attitude that the ancestor of the Dragon Palace should have no evil intentions towards Long Qing. Otherwise, with the strength of the old dragon, he could directly destroy the sword sect. There was no need for him to take so many detours. However, who could guarantee that the others in the Dragon Palace did not have any evil intentions? Therefore, it was always right to be careful. Hearing Xiao Chen's reminder, Long Qing nodded and replied, "Little brother, don't worry. I will be careful." After saying this, Long Qing left the sword sect under Long Shan's lead. Seeing that everyone was completely gone, Xiao Chun and Xian Yuanling turned around and returned. Long Qing going to the Dragon Palace was probably a good thing for her. Of course, it was also the same for the sword sect. As long as Long Qing successfully gained a foothold in the Dragon Palace, the sword sect and the Dragon Palace would naturally be able to establish some connections. Just as Long Qing was taken away by the experts of the Dragon Palace, on the other side, in the main hall of the Heavenly Sect, the End Realm experts of the Heavenly Sect gathered together again. However, compared to the last time, the expressions of the End Realm experts of the Heavenly Sect were very serious this time. They originally thought that the last assassination attempt would be a sure thing, but who would have thought that it would end in failure? This was something that no one had expected. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 2013. A group of End Realm experts from the Katian sect sat in the main hall with a solemn expression on their faces. The failure of the last assassination attempt had undoubtedly made the Katian sect fear the sword sect even more. The sect leader of the Katian sect still hadn't come out of seclusion. For experts of their level, it was normal for them to be in seclusion for decades or even centuries. Hence, if they wanted to deal with the sword sect, they obviously couldn't rely on the sect leader of the Katian sect. They gathered once again, and one of the End Realm experts spoke first. Junwu Wuya has appeared. Looking at the current situation, it is only a matter of time before he joins the sword sect. If Junwu Wuya joins the sword sect, I think all of you should be clear about what this means to the Katian sect. Hearing this End Realm expert's words, the others all nodded their heads solemnly. Indeed, from Jun Wuya's appearance this time, and saving Xiao Chun and the others, Jun Wuya's importance to Xiao Chun was far from what Zhou Song and the other disciples could compare to. And with Jun Wuya's importance to Xiao Chun, if Xiao Chun asked Jun Wuya to join the sword sect, Jun Wuya would most likely agree. At that time, the sword sect would have Jun Wuya and would have the ability to become one of the top 10 Lingtian sects. And looking at the current situation, the Katian sect was undoubtedly the best target. As for why the sword sect would choose the Katian sect, firstly, it was because of the enmity between the two sections. Secondly, it was because the Katian sect strength was at the bottom of the top 10 Lingtian sects. Since they wanted to become one of the top 10 Lingtian sects, the sword sect would definitely choose a weaker opponent. They couldn't directly challenge an old Lingtian sect like the Dragon Palace. Hence, there was an 80% chance that the sword sect would choose the Katian sect. He could not allow the sword sect to have a chance to rise. Otherwise, when Jun Weiyao returned to the Great Thousand World, the heavenly sect would be in danger. The threat from the sword sect could no longer be ignored. At the same time, they had no choice but to deal with it. Everyone agreed with this person's words. However, immediately after, someone else spoke up. Where's the sovereign? Shouldn't we inform the sect master and take down the sword sect in one fell swoop? The sect master of the heavenly sect was in seclusion. Originally, according to everyone present, there was no need for the sect master to deal with the current sword sect. But now, it seemed that they had no choice but to inform the sect master. When he heard this, the End Realm expert who spoke first nodded. I have informed the sect leader, but I haven't gotten a reply. He had already informed the sect leader of the Katian sect about this matter, but it was hard to say what the exact reply would be. He could only wait.